together we
Where
have
electronics
superpower
don't
where
work
like
around
nothing
us.
fucking works. Yeah, and so if we're doing it together, because I told him, I said, if he has the same EMF issue, like I'm a slider, things like well, lights pop, and I said,
Right.
if you have that too, and I have that, then together we're probably gonna not make this thing work because it's gonna explode, and then it's just all
Dude,
gonna,
no
yeah.
wonder. Yeah, so if electronics tend to not work around certain people and then you get those people together, well, then you've got Congress basically trying to work
So
the computer. I think we
I've blown out the stage
Hmm.
at a festival in front of like a lot of fucking people
oh my
because
God.
I walk by stuff and it turns off. And then like everything was turning off. We played a show where it was just me and the drummer because all their stuff went off. It was in
All the
where
amps
was that? It
blew.
was in
It was in
Arkansas.
Arkansas,
In
Little Rock.
Little Rock. And so he couldn't play, the other guitarist couldn't play. It was me and the drummer, and there's a video out there of me singing and the drummer drumming because there's nothing because I blew it
Right.
all out.
That's crazy. All right. So, a friend of mine, Jason Barron, who sings for Harkonnen, wanted to do an intro for a song. He was in the studio and he started reading this chant from the Solomon or whatever. It's in like Sanskrit or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was chanting it, and all the electricity went off in the studio, and they had to start over. And he didn't. He left that part out that time, you know. But all right, well, actually, we should jump into it now because we are live. And sorry, everybody, about the technical difficulties. But all right, so I've been listening to your guys' music now for a while, and I think I've been through the entire discography that is released, and there is not one song that I don't like. Every single
thanks.
song,
That's
and
so
the
sweet.
the variety of songs and sounds is just incredible, the range of different sounds. But then I came across a song called Alternate, which, am I saying that right? I think
Yes,
Alternate, right?
correct.
And
Yes.
so as I listened to this song, it started and it was clearly different than the other songs.
Right.
The vocal started, and I had this, I was like, oh, she kind of sounds like she just got out of bed. And then as the song starts picking up, I'm start. Oh, this is going somewhere. That first part was on purpose, right? And
Right.
I swear, whenever that chorus hit, the hair lifted on my arms, and then I could like see what you were singing about in my mind more clearly than I had ever had thoughts whenever I hear songs. And I remember thinking to myself, this is alchemy.
Yeah.
These people, these two people make alchemy with music.
Mhm.
By you don't stick to any rules or regulations
Yeah.
when it comes to your craft, and that is incredible to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's funny because I don't think that our fans knew how to take that song when it came out.
I can see that.
So there's like a thing that happened to me, and I'll do it in the quickest way I can because you know that I talk a lot. um,
No, tell me
so
the full story. I want to know the story
okay,
of that song.
so I was like any other musician that headed off to Hollywood to find my dream of being a rock star. I got out
Right,
there
right,
with two guitars and a bag of clothes, and I was going to go be a rock star. And I was
right,
very stuck in my ego. I was stuck inside the part of me that pulled me down to that third dimensional, you know, space that really made me think that I need to be selfish and focused on my own career and just be laser focused on making it in music. And that is the rock star mentality. And that's what I
right,
was going with. And that's what I did. And I got there and I just blew right into it. And I
right,
was not a part of anything but that. And so
right.
if you listen to that music that came out back then, you can hear that. I said there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of
Oh
negativity,
yeah, right.
frustration, yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Still some of my favorite songs by you,
I
by the way.
still appreciate it. I still because that's the dark side. That's the shadow side of me that I didn't know at the time. At the time,
Right,
I thought that's what it was. This was life, you know. I had a rough life. There's a lot of stuff happening. I'm singing about it. I'm pissed
right.
off, and then after a really long tour, we did this for a few years. After a really long tour, then what ended up happening was I got really fucking sick. Am I allowed to say the F word? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, we can
Okay.
fucking curse. It's great.
Okay. Okay, because I don't do it a lot, but sometimes when I'm really extreme, I'm like, that's just the word, you know?
Right.
So I got really sick and I was a really healthy person. I ate healthy. I was a vegetarian my whole life. So, I wasn't like a horribly like, out of shape, I shouldn't have been sick. And
Or were you sick? Was there a diagnosis
yeah,
or
so I went to a bunch of doctors. I had started with head to toe hives. They called it dermatographism. I wasn't allergic to anything. They sent me to a rheumatologist. They started diagnosing me. First, they thought I might have had lymphoma. Then they tried to diagnose me with scleroderma, which is some disease where your body hardens up.
You have to tell where we were right before this all happened too, though.
Right. Well, we went to a haunted museum, so we didn't know. Did I bring a demon back with me? Yeah.
All
yeah,
of a sudden,
And
their skin
we just
started
didn't know
writing on
like what was
itself.
happening to me. If you like had etched something into my arm, you could like see it would puff out. And then and then they sent me to a rheumatologist and she said, "You have lupus. I'm sorry, your organs are gonna shut down if you don't take this medication that I'm gonna give you." So
that's some serious shit.
I was like, "I'm not taking that." Because I don't I'm not a big medicine person.
Right,
I'm into natural medicine, so I kind of like I have to go
right.
through all the natural stuff before I break down and agree to do something that is medical. So I was like right off the bat, there's no way. She's like, well, then your organs are going to shut down and you're going to die. And I was just like,
That's
what?
dark about it, huh?
There's a lot of
And
stuff that
you
happened.
you were
I,
like you were
I was
content, ready to accept that part of it?
no,
Like,
I was just like no, and
I don't think we ever accepted it.
well, I got really sick to the point where I didn't leave my room for a few weeks. I couldn't get out of the bed. I
right.
was doing less than like 5 steps a day. And that's when people call it the dark night of the soul, but this was beyond that. This was like a near death experience for me because I was
It
so
was
sick.
affecting you physically.
It was affecting me physically, mentally. Did you drink a lot of alcohol? No, I don't drink alcohol. I don't do drugs. I haven't had alcohol in 6 years before this. Like
Right.
this is
The
like
the
this
the
was
more you say
like
it seems to be something from upstairs trying
right.
to knock you out of that ego set of mind.
Exactly. I was up in that ego. I was like so stuck in just this physical, egotistical, selfish part of the brain and mindset.
Rockstar shit.
That I didn't and something knocked me out of it. Something was like, "No, you're going to lay down in this bed and you're not going to
Right.
move until you get this figured out." And I
Until you realize,
and
right.
I was an atheist. I was an atheist. I didn't believe in anything. I thought it was all
I
bullshit.
find that very hard to believe based on your lyrics, but okay.
I didn't believe in anything. I was into Buddhism and stuff like that, but I never got into believing in a god or any kind of spirits or anything. To me,
Okay.
it was all bullshit. So I started not hearing a schizophrenic voice, and it wasn't an actual physical verbal voice. It was an intuition voice that started speaking to me, and it was like, you need to you need to start meditating and all these things. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, I'm going crazy. I'm losing my
Right.
mind. I'm going nuts. That's what this is.
People who have like high fevers or near death
Yeah,
experiences or extreme anything oftentimes have shamanic almost experience.
exactly. So that's what was happening. And it was happening all the time. And I didn't understand it. So I went to a lot of different kinds of doctors. I went to a psychiatrist. I went to everybody. And I was like, please help me to figure out like what's happening to me. And nobody knew. And in the end, the long
Uh,
story short was that it yeah, I know a lot of people are on drugs and alcohol, and it's funny because that was one of the problems I had with being in Hollywood was everyone was fucking high or
yeah,
fucked up, and I couldn't handle it. It was so hard for me. So we got out of Hollywood. We left, and we went up into
good,
the desert. We went up into the
good.
desert, and
Oh shit.
I started I started meditating, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I started with just guided meditations, and that wasn't doing it. And I was doing all these different things. I was reading like crazy. I was just trying to absorb as much as I could. And
Right,
so I got on this timeline that like I knew like, okay, there is something. I'm not an atheist. There's something. And I know it's trying to
right.
talk to me. It's trying to talk to me.
That's a
It's
big
trying to
moment.
it's trying to make me realize that it's there.
Right,
But I'm not quite seeing it. Because when you're coming from
right.
that third dimensional space, you want to see something. I want it right
Yeah.
in front of me.
And
So
this
I'm
thing wants
tapping
to
in.
work through you. It wants
Yeah.
to express itself through you.
So it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I had just a few days got out of the hospital. I was in so much pain. It was awful. So I got out of the hospital. I couldn't sleep. I was having really bad insomnia. And we had a little makeshift music studio in our apartment. So I went and at the time I just got onto onto the DAW, the Logic, whatever, playing around.
Yeah.
And there's a keyboard and a MIDI keyboard and all that. And I just started humming. And then I started
Yeah.
making gobbledygook, I call it, nonsense words.
Yeah.
And it was like, 3 came, and I just started, and it was this soft voice that I hadn't done. And all of a
Right.
sudden, I started
I
writing these,
noticed because the voice was childlike compared to all the other.
and when it was
It was like you were
happening,
evolving the song. It sounds
yeah,
like you're evolving from child to
right.
some
I was like,
robotic cosmic
yeah, there
being.
was this thing, right? So it's coming out, and I'm going, what the hell am I doing? Because
It was improv.
I was aware that something was happening. My fingers were moving, and my mouth was putting out these words, and it was childlike, and none of it made any sense to me. And I was like, wow, like this is wild. Like, what am I doing? So I left it on there. I saved it. I went to bed. The next day, I said to him, I said, hey, I was fucking around. I just want to see if I can remember how to use logic. I wanted to make it sound
Yeah.
not too crazy, you know. And will you listen and see, you know, if I did anything that's worth like maybe cleaning up, or maybe we can just go off of something, or maybe nothing, you know, who knows? You know how
Right.
music is.
Right.
So he messed around with it, and he turned it into like what it is. And I said, well, we should re-record the vocals, because there was nothing on my
You
vocal.
felt like you weren't
So
coherent.
this person's saying caffeine affects the brain. I haven't had caffeine in 15 years. So at this point, there's
We
nothing.
don't do
I don't
anything.
smoke marijuana. I do nothing. This is just me pure, like white knuckling it through life. Okay. So
Wow.
he does that. And then I said, well, I should re-record the vocals, because I wasn't, this is just me in the middle of the night. Like, I can't, that's not, like, this isn't like, you can't put that out into the world, you know? He's like,
Right.
no, you got to leave it like that.
Good
So
fucking call. Good call.
he
Yeah.
And
said,
I'm
we're
glad you
leaving
made
it.
that
Every,
decision because the
Yeah,
song is
everything was
so,
already there.
yeah,
it was
and it's
there.
Yeah.
real.
So,
Yeah.
And
so he,
the
I'm
he
a
left
big
it.
fan of first takes.
Yeah,
So
yes,
I think the first take is that capturing the actual soul of the song.
yeah,
So a lot
right.
of first takes I keep.
he does. He's like
That's
really
where the
strict
truth
about
is.
It is, because if you rehearse it all of a sudden becomes stale.
it. Yeah,
Yes,
and
and
it's
now you're
inauthentic.
reciting something that doesn't
Right.
have. And
And
when
then
I
it's
listen to the song,
inauthentic. It's not real. It's not
right,
real anymore. It's watered down. So he kept it. And so I
right.
was a little bit off. I was like, all right. So he's like, you know, what was this about? I was like, I have no fucking idea. I don't know what the hell I was saying. Like, this is like, I have no clue what this even means. And if you listen to the lyrics, it's like, what is any of it? So I didn't try to understand it. We just said, you know, it's about it sounds like, okay, well, maybe people are in a multiverse and they meet each other. Some, you know, cool sci-fi shit. So we just put it out there like that.
Yeah,
Um, so uh, you know, the fans were, we called it a love song.
of course. Anything that goes soft, they always tend to call it a ballad or a
And we
love
said,
song
okay,
or
it's our
whatever.
love ballad. Sure. You know,
Mhm.
okay, let's do that. Right. So, you know, that was when I really started getting tapped in to source. And when I started getting the information downloads and all the information into my mind coming from, and I still didn't know where it was coming
This
from.
was the catalyst to the
It
rest
started
of it.
going like this. And
Wow.
I went on a sabbatical. So that song was released 2 years after the song previous, which is called Hater Bait, and was the most negative fucking song I've ever like written.
And yeah,
It was not
polar
like
opposite.
polar opposite.
I do have to say too, Alternate was the first song that I ever fully produced
Without any outside
without
production
any.
help.
Yeah,
Really?
it just
See,
happened.
that
It
I find
happened.
to be amazing because that's what I kind of refer to when I meant the alchemy of it is like I feel like this dude could take a toaster oven being thrown into a washing machine and turn it into music because
Yeah,
the song itself is like it's from another world.
Right.
It's
it just appeared.
It appeared. This is that
right,
song Alternate. We didn't write that. The universe wrote that. It just
right
used
through
us as
you.
a conduit. We're a
Prince,
conduit
Yes.
for something.
Well,
Prince,
and
the artist Prince, he used to sit for hours in front of the tape and say, "I'm thinking the album
Yeah.
onto the tape."
Yeah. It's just a really
So
interesting
yeah,
that I
right,
didn't have access to previous to
it
this
comes from
awakening.
another place.
Yeah. So before I had the awakening, I was doing inauthentic, just third dimensional negative shit. And then
right,
all of a sudden this thing opened up. So I went into on a sabbatical. I took a few years off. I didn't do anything. There was hardly any posts for me online. No one heard from me. And I went into a cocoon. And
right,
it was me trying to figure out who the hell am I? It was back to
right.
that Alice in Wonderland who am I? Who are you? Who are you? And why are you here? And what in the hell are you doing? And
Right. It's
and
not nonsense anymore. There's no more
right,
nihilism. There's no more meaninglessness. You know
right,
now that you've got a job to do.
exactly. So I'm in
Fucking
there
beautiful.
and I'm trying to figure it out. So I start this meditation group online and I got people coming in it. And I think some people didn't know what the hell I was talking about. They thought I might have lost my mind.
Oh
Some
yeah.
people, some people thought it was kind of cool. It was, all that kind of stuff. And it was me just I was channeling everything I was experiencing into words just to
Right.
I needed somewhere I almost did it just for myself, and then I said, "I should open this. Somebody might get help from this. So let me open it and see if
Right.
maybe this helps somebody." And I just went there for a really long time, and it became like, 15 minutes of meditation, 20 minutes of meditation, an hour, 50, like, and it got to the point where I was meditating so much, and all I do is just close my eyes and go in. No drugs, no DMT, no
Right.
anything,
Right.
just simply me shutting off and connecting to this source. And all this
Right.
stuff started happening that it would take
Right.
7,000 of these videos to get into.
Right. Well, it's
And
like that sickness seemed to tamper with your DNA
it
in
did.
such
It
a
did.
way to start letting you receive things, and I
It
can't
did.
help but see all these synchronicities with. Well, okay, so you had the rock star Hollywood thing going on, but then you moved to the desert,
And then
and
I didn't care
every
anymore.
allegory on Earth, the desert represents a place of confusion
It's the
where
red
you
book.
go. Yeah,
It's
like
the
in the
red book.
Red Book, exactly. He ends up in the desert where everything looks the same direction. It represents confusion,
Right.
but you find yourself within that desert.
Exactly. Exactly. So I isolated myself to the point where I don't think y'all listening understand, and Nick will tell you, I became extremely agoraphobic to the point where I haven't eaten in a restaurant or eaten outdoor food in 4 years now. I only cook my own food. Everything's pure. I've only been putting stuff in my body that's healthy, and I have isolated myself to the
Yeah,
point
you
where,
mentioned you're gardening, right?
oh yeah, gardening and just like sitting in my garden and for hours with hummingbirds and butterflies and dragonflies and just
So
being a part of that,
let me ask you this. Is this purity of what you're taking into your body? Of course, the no drugs and alcohol thing goes without saying. But when it comes to food, eating from your own garden and whatnot, do you feel like that has an obvious or direct effect on your downloads?
Absolutely. So I
Really?
feel that the food system is so destructive and poisoned that if you get addicted to that food that they're putting out, which is purely like horrible for you,
Right.
um,
Meant to be.
it is going to affect your DNA and your downloads and all the
Right.
stuff that you're doing
I
because
have a
it's
little a
destructive.
conspiracy hypothesis that McDonald's might be working for the medical industry to keep them in business.
Yeah, to keep people
He
sick.
used to say
Get them
that
young.
when we used to eat it a long time ago, and I never ate meat, but I would eat before I was vegan, I used to eat their dairy crap and stuff. Their ice creams are addicting, and that's what we would do. We'd go get him, and he would go, "I feel like there's drugs in this
There's
ice cream.
drugs
Like,
in it.
why do
Yeah,
we keep eating
definitely
these ice
drugs in it.
creams?"
Yeah.
He would think, and to this day, I still will sometimes crave it. Like, oh, I wish I could
Mhm.
have it. I can't have that stuff anymore because what
Right.
I was going to say is the illness ended up being
It's fucking
it's
delicious.
ridiculous.
It's
It's
too
ridiculous.
delicious. It's too delicious. If
Dude,
something
nothing
is
should be
that
that
damn good,
No,
delicious.
it shouldn't be.
it
Nothing should
can't be
taste
that
that
good.
good.
It's nope.
And and what the illness ended up being, and y'all gonna laugh, is um it ended up being um it turned out I had a gluten intolerance.
Whoa.
So they went from
That's
lupus to
that
gluten.
left field right
Yeah,
there.
so because the biopsy they did on me ended up saying, "Oh, it's not lupus. Sorry, stop. Don't take the drugs anymore. We're gonna figure it out." And then they want to do all this other shit. So it ended up being just cut. And they didn't know if I had a wheat allergy or what, but whatever it was, don't eat gluten. And then the other thing was, I had endometriosis, which affected my ovaries, and I was having some ovary insufficiency, and that was causing some of the hormonal stuff that was making me feel so sick. So
Yeah.
they went so that's what it ended up being. Well, but what's funny about it though is it's like it made me have to have such a strict diet that even if I wanted to go eat the ice
Now,
cream, the drug ice
right.
cream at McDonald's, I can't because I'll get really
Right.
sick. So I can't have. So my body just shut down and was like, "You're not going to eat any more garbage. You're not going to fucking do anything. You're going to sit and you're going to meditate. You're going to figure out who you are. Who are you?" And I had to
Right.
think back to my childhood when I was a child and they started diagnosing me with all kinds of spectrum things and,
Right.
trying to find out what was wrong with me and how I always never felt like I belonged. Like I didn't feel like
Right.
what was this? Why do I feel so weird in this thing? And it turned out
They
that
felt like they had to fix
yes,
that.
they were trying to fix me. I found out through all the stuff that I did that I'm not this body. This isn't me. You're seeing
Right.
my car, baby. You're seeing my car. I'm driving. This is a
Yeah, right.
person.
This is a
And
vehicle.
this is a vehicle and this is a computer and I'm typing away in there all the time. What I'm doing right now is AI.
Right, right.
And
Literally.
and me, who's me? I'm right here, in here
Right.
somewhere, and I'm floating in this thing, and I'm experiencing virtual reality, and that's what this is.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it
virtual.
literally is virtual reality too. If you
Yeah,
consider how we filter reality through our nervous system and our
absolutely,
limited five senses,
absolutely.
it literally we have a virtual reality, and until we leave the body, we can't experience it for what it
Right,
Mhm.
actually is. And I like that metaphor for this is a car, this is a vehicle, this
that's
is
all it is. That's
who
all
I
it is.
am.
You gotta
And
just
to
that's
realize
it.
that at a young age is a gift. And it is abhorrent to me how we treat people who realize that at an early age, and we call it a mental illness
Right, well, they
and
called it a disability, and
a
so
disability.
now you're on the spectrum. Now
Right.
you have to go to therapy, and you have to learn how to be a person, because you're not being a person. That's what they
You
say
have
to
to
you.
learn how to be a person. That's
Mhm.
Mhm.
so fucking weird and specific and abstract
Right,
because you're like, well, first of all, I already am. That's done.
right.
And
I'm
but they're
here.
like, no, 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 no. You have to fit in this box of
Box.
Yeah.
person.
So, Joey, who are you before you spoke English and before you started talking to people? Who are you
Right,
before that?
right,
That's who you are. That's
right,
who I was. And
right,
so I have to come back to that. I didn't know that. I was in Hollywood trying to be a rock star. I didn't know this stuff.
right,
So now I'm back and I'm in the desert and I realize now, holy shit, I'm driving around in a VR suit. This is a VR suit.
right,
And my whole reality is being projected probably from the black hole, the holographic stuff, because I'm also in science. So, I knew some of that quantum physics stuff and I started putting it all together.
right.
And then you have to deal with the spiritual ego where you go, "Oh my God, I'm enlightened. What am I?" And then you have to bring
Yeah,
yourself, then you got to bring yourself back down again and say, "I'm not better than anybody." And that's when I figured out, and I told you this earlier, we're all on like Christmas lights. We're all lights
yeah,
on that string. Some of us are blinking, some of us are on, some of us are
right.
off, and but we're all. It's
The
the
same
same.
strength.
So I'm no better just because I
Right,
might have realized some of this stuff. It doesn't mean I'm better. It just means that
right,
my light blinked on, and I got to deal
right.
with my light.
I've
And
often said that from a sidereal point of view, human beings are more like a moss. If
yes,
you're looking at us from the outside, you can't differentiate, oh, this piece of moss is my favorite piece. It's all one, we're all just moss on this log that is Earth. And that's why I think if, whether you call it extraterrestrials or angels, whichever you prefer, which we might be talking about the same
it's
thing,
the same thing. Yeah.
whenever they speak to us, they always have this common theme of we need you to level up. And you're like, oh, I need to level up. They're like, yes, but also no, all of you need to
Right,
level
all of
up.
us collectively. And the other thing is, we are them. So they're speaking to themselves, and we're a piece of them, and we forget that. Yeah. So
A
you are the
fractal
angel.
of them.
You are God. You are the angel. You are
Right.
the
Like
alien.
the magnetic field of the human
I
body
am.
is a
He is.
fractal
They
of
are.
the human of
Right.
the
So
magnetic field of the
the,
earth.
the fractal pieces, you can look at it as as just like a hyperdimensional cube, a
Yeah.
tesseract, and we're
Right.
all little pieces of that spinning, and the source is in the center and we're fragments of that source. And so, like, you're me and I'm you, and that's why I said we know each other.
Must.
But we've known each other for so many thousands of years, and it's like all the people speaking right now, we know them, they know us. That's why we're
Right.
all here doing this right now. We're in this like tesseractive connection with these fractals, and
Right.
the angels that try to help us level up are pieces. It's a reminder to yourself. So you look in the mirror and you say, "You can do this. You can get out there and do this." That's what the angels or the aliens or the source.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's
Right.
reminding you and guiding you to get
Right.
back to that. And so that's where it all. And then we. I said, okay, I'm ready to write. I'm really ready to write an album, an EP now. Let's just get out there and do it, right? So
Right.
we started working on it, and Nick
Mhm.
started his whole thing, and
So what
all
album came out after this awakening?
so it's called Disclosure, and
Okay, gotcha.
we just released it a few months ago, and all of the stuff that I did in it, in terms of the lyrical stuff and all the things that I added to it, I did through a mediumship where I sat in my garden and I meditated, and it all just came to me. So all the lyrics all the visual stuff was I brought it in through my
Right.
meditation work. So it wasn't me, the
And so
rock star in Hollywood person.
right,
Yeah.
you went from trying to impress Hollywood to just going, okay, what can I do for you? And then let it
Yeah.
come through
Well, there
yourself.
was a part though that I was almost not going to do it. He had to talk me back into it because I was going to give up. I was going to say I was going to go become a monk. I'm not
Right.
fucking kidding. I
Yeah.
was going to shave my head and go live in
That
a
could I was
monastery.
about to say that that cocoon that you described earlier is very reminiscent of the
Yeah,
monk that leaves
exactly.
society and goes to the
Yeah.
Mhm.
mountains, you
So
know,
I
which
started to feel bad, like, oh my God, this whole time I've been doing this horrible thing, writing these horrible lyrics in this horrible Hollywood world, doing this ego shit. And oh my God, I have to
right,
atone for it. So I kind
right,
of started to fall into that a little bit. And he brought me back in with the balance with his stuff with, hey, we're going to write some music. What are you doing?
right,
The
right,
whole album is exactly what we want to do. We
right,
weren't trying to impress anybody.
Well, because
right,
before we had a label. We had a label before.
Yeah, they control everything you do.
right,
Yeah.
They okay the songs with you before you put it out.
Managers that told me, you know, you can't do this, and I'm serious. And it was just it's hard when you're an artist,
right.
and then
And
the issue with the screaming too. We didn't know
they'll tell
what
you
to do.
that they want something and you'll do it and give it back to them. They'll tell you the opposite.
Yeah, it's really like a mind fuck.
Yeah, it's
And
like a job.
it
It's
is,
like
Yeah,
having a
it is,
it
job
is. It
with a
is.
it is a
boss.
job.
And
So
art doesn't work like that.
no, it
That's not
doesn't.
No.
that's
And
not
then
how
there
you
was
do
the
that.
part of me. So now there's the part of me that with Jung goes into this is not to kill don't try to kill the shadow self. You must
Right.
like accept the shadow and use
Right.
it because it's not going to be such a bad thing if you do it the right way. So maybe I was doing it the wrong way before, but now I can use it. So I wasn't aware of that, and so there was. Do I keep screaming? Is that bad? Do I keep talking about dark stuff? Is that bad?
That
I
gets
didn't know.
yeah, that gets confusing until you realize that like even Michael in the Bible wields a sword and he
Right.
spits the sword from his mouth, not
Yeah.
as a weapon, but the sword certainly does symbolize a weapon. And it's a matter of justice. And as
Yeah.
Carl said it, the shadow is fuel.
Mhm.
And if you're a rabbit and you're innocent and you're harmless, that doesn't mean you're virtuous. If you are a beast, if you are a monster like your old music and you have that capability, but then you choose equilibrium and you say, okay, I've got anger, but it's righteous anger, and I've got peace and love, but it's backed up by this ferocious, dangerous
Right.
energy.
Right.
Now that's virtue, you
So
know?
we had to talk about that, and when we were writing this album, talk about like how much of my shadow self are we going to let come into this? Like
Right,
All of it.
so we just let it be. Well, all of that side, but all of the new side too.
right.
So we basically took the two halves and we let them just both be what they were,
Well,
and
if you hold one back, then it's gonna feel stunted.
yeah, and it's
Yeah,
inauthentic.
It's art. You have to have both sides.
So what we
right.
got
You have to
out of
let it
that,
go through.
if you listen to our album, and someone just asked who we are, we're Hail Sagan. The album is called Disclosure. You'll get some of the softer stuff. Hi.
Hi.
And then you'll get some of the heavy stuff. And there's a
Right,
mix. And so
It's a
right.
balance.
you get both. And so what's cool
Yin
about
and
that is
yang.
you get both.
That's
Yeah,
right.
you get both sides. And so whatever you're feeling, you can bounce, and that's what's inside of me. It's two parts of me that are going like this all the time. And when
Right.
you look at the videos or you listen to the music, you can feel that coming. And
See,
Pete got a lot of that too, just
Yeah.
like
this is
liking
the
both
same.
sides.
That what you're describing with your music and as above, so below is what I feel like is the common error in this love and light movement. That is not necessarily bad. I'm not saying it's destructive, but I've often said that if you imagine your life as having a rubber band between your fingers, right, connected to a slingshot in the middle. Well, if you're like, oh, love and light only, that rubber band is going to snap and
And
it's
it
going to
will.
go all the way into the left side. So if you live more like this,
Right.
you have a graceful sway between
And,
those
and
two
also
elements.
being all light is so inauthentic because
Mhm.
I'm not all light. I have
No,
Nobody.
I have parts of me
right,
that are not good. Like I get angry or I get frustrated or like
right,
I'm not going to come out as this billowing light force that's going to come in.
right,
It's like no, there's stuff that I'm still in this human body. I still have to deal with the same shit everyone else has to deal with. So it's like I've
right,
just learned how to balance it appropriately. I've
right,
learned how to um to kind of accept a lot of the things that some people are still struggling with. I resolved it. I found happiness, which was really strange because I never thought I'd ever figure that out. And
I
I found
see. Oh, I like the way you phrase
that
that. Figured it out.
I figured out happiness. So happiness doesn't come from becoming a celebrity. It doesn't come from being rich. It doesn't come from being famous. It doesn't come from going to Hollywood and being a rock star. It doesn't come from having a Lamborghini. It doesn't come from any of the things you could possibly imagine. It literally just exists in that source inside of
Right.
you, buzzing 24/7. It's like the sunshine behind the clouds. You know, when the clouds go away, the sun's
Yes.
still there. Same
I
thing.
I
And if you keep that there, you can still have a bad day and you can still have bad
right.
shit that happens, but that happiness can lay underneath it and you can tap into it and it helps
Mhm.
to get you through. And that's what I found
Right.
happiness truly is. It's so different than what we think.
Well, I was having a conversation with a toddler, which, by the way, not it's something I love doing is either very old people or very young people who can barely talk. And this little girl, bless her heart, I was kind of picking her brain. We were drawing pictures and stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I was like pitching her questions just to, what does a toddler's mind do? And I pitched her the big one. I was like, what is the meaning of life anyway? I asked her. And she's like, just be happy, is what she goes.
Right.
Just be happy.
Yep.
That's it.
And I
That's
was
That's
it.
like,
because
so
happiness is not a
how do you go
tangible thing
about
that you obtain.
Yeah, you can't
right,
obtain happiness. You'll just be
Just like
chasing it.
sadness isn't either.
You know,
right,
the chasing the dragon isn't just about drugs. It's also about trying to chase happiness or perfection or all these things that humans tend to try to chase. And there's no
right.
chasing. There's
That
just
exists
being.
purely in a child. They
Yeah.
don't
They
know
know.
anything
Yeah.
else.
Purely in a child, right?
Yeah.
And I actually asked her. I was like, "Can you break that down for me? How do I be happy?" And she pointed to her mouth and she just went like this, like,
Yeah.
"All you have to do is smile."
Right.
And I couldn't help but be like, "So, okay, listen." I told the toddler, I was like, "I've been pissed off for 38 years.
Right.
You mean to tell me I can just do that anytime I
You
want?"
just
Yeah.
He's like, "Fuck yeah!" I don't
Yeah.
give
yeah.
a fuck.
Have you
But
listened to any of the talks about like the with the children? They have some. I think in Virginia, there's an institute. It's a college or a university that's studying it right now. They've been doing it for years, but it's about children up until the age 6. Like remember where they came from, and we
yes,
and we as a society tamp it down and push it out of them. So it's like um, maybe it's like the child's just remembering the
I
truth.
I
And then
think they're
we
closer to
squeeze it out
source.
of them with society, and then they forget by the time they're a pissed
Hmm.
off teenager, you know?
Yeah, and that pissed off teenager archetype hits pretty quick too.
Yeah.
We haven't got it here yet, but it's probably on its way. Meet
And
Emery, by the way.
hi.
One, uh, one of the main
Hi.
sources of the library. He's almost getting too big now to where he can sit with me.
No, he's never gonna be too big.
With this damn winter coat on, it's not helping. But hey, be careful with those lights set up and stuff. Sorry, sometimes it's chaos around here, but it's part of it. Well, so speaking of us all being the same person and that kind of ideal of us being connected in some way, I got to pick your brain about your book collection
Yeah.
because it has occurred to me, as you had told me before, that we happen to have quite a lot of the same books accidentally
Yes. So, well, that's
in the
because
same.
we've known each other for thousands of years. But the thing is, it's funny, is that so I meditate before I go to bed. I meditate in the morning before I
Okay.
start my day. It's a very important part of my life. And so before I meditate and go to sleep, I look at YouTube and see if there's any because really love like Ram Dass and Wayne Dyer, and I like to look at the little,
Yes.
those little or Alan Watts, those little quick like 2 to 5 minute clips,
Right.
where you can just get a. I like to have a pep talk before I sleep because it's
I
very
like that.
important.
That's probably a fantastic practice, by the way.
It
Most
has
people
helped
go to
me
sleep
so much.
worried about tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't look at anything. In fact, by the way, I don't read the news at all. I have no idea what's happening in the world unless it's important to know, and he'll let me know or someone will let me know. But
It ain't.
um, so I go to bed with a pleasant thought,
Yeah.
and so I do like a little Alan Watts, just a little, listen to it, and then do my meditation, and then go to sleep. And I came across your channel. It was a few weeks ago, and it had beautiful imagery, and I thought, oh, that's really enticing. Let me check. Let me click on that. And sometimes that stuff is clickbait, so I wasn't sure. And I
Oh,
got
of
on
course.
there, and you weren't on it yet. It was just some of your slides, and you were talking, and
Right.
I was like, I first of all, I knew you right away. I was like, I was like, I felt like it was like me talking. It was like really weird.
Right.
And and
Same
then
as I felt whenever I heard you guys' music for the first time.
isn't that crazy?
I had this
So
weird thought. I was like, "Oh, they wrote something I would write," and I was like,
yeah.
"That thought doesn't make sense." But
So I saw some of the books that you were, and I was like, I have that book, I have that book, I have that book, I have that book. Oh, that's right. Yep, I have that. And then I
yeah,
saw a couple, and I was flipping through some of your stuff, and I'm like, I have like every book that you have. How do I have every
yeah,
book that you have? And then I was like, nobody I know. I have one friend that has a lot of the same books I have, but I don't know anyone that has all of the same books that I have. And I was just like, all right, this is so. I had so the intuition. I don't like to call it a voice because then people go, "Do you have schizophrenia?" Not that there's anything wrong with that, but no, I don't.
right, right.
So I was like, something told me you should reach out and you should talk to him. And I was like, I'm gonna
I'm
talk to
so
this
glad
guy.
you did.
Well, then I did. It happened again. And I was like,
Right,
all right, fine. This is the guiding voice that's telling me I should do something. Okay, I'm not gonna ignore you. You're gonna make me sick again. I'm not gonna do that, Okay,
right.
let's do it.
Oh, it'll get you if you ignore
It
that
will.
little voice intuition thing that makes you do things that you know you have to do,
Yeah.
and you don't want to do them, or maybe you think it's going to piss somebody off, or maybe you don't have time. It'll punish you.
It will
It'll
get you at least down to your knees where you're gonna have to do it. You
right,
cannot escape it. So we do that, right? I contact you. I didn't even know because I didn't know how to contact someone on YouTube. I had no idea.
right,
And so I went over to Instagram where I figured, well, maybe they got an Instagram. And I clicked on it and I said, I'll send you a message. I don't know if you'll ever see it. And well,
right,
if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And if not, that's fine. And that's how I live my life. If it's meant to
right.
happen, it happens. If it doesn't, that's great too. That's rejection is protection, whatever. So then he got back to me, and I was like, I just wanted to let you know I love your channel. We have a lot of the same books.
Right.
I have a little black cube on my workstation, my art station, and I've had it there for a long time. I've been obsessed with Saturn, whatever. And and
So what's funny
it
about
was
that,
just
real quick, and not to cut you off, or you can
no,
continue,
it's
but
go.
like, so I can't manage my Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, but I have to have those there as an anchor. You called it an anchor,
Yeah,
about social media accounts, or else somebody can come along and utilize your name.
yeah, you have
So
to like kind of
a
force
friend of
it.
mine, Katie, kind of handles the Instagram as just volunteering, like as a friend, and
Yeah,
she'll let me know if there's a good question in there or a cool idea. And this particular time when she called me, she called no text, she called me. She was like, "Yo, this band called Hail Sagan contacted you, and I don't care if you're busy. Fucking get on this shit." And whenever I clicked on your guys' Instagram, and I immediately I was like, okay, these are very creative people, and it is definitely. And I saw your following and everything, and I was like, that's definitely worth looking into. But it wasn't until I actually sat down and listened to the music and the
yeah,
words and the lyrics that I was like, this is something incredibly tapped in. This is something that's incredibly coming from source directly. There's no ego behind it. Maybe your old music, maybe a little
mhm,
bit,
there
but
was.
that your newest out, like the Seraphim song, um, alternate that I mentioned, and really the entire new album from front to back is just something that I feel like was uh was pulled out of the anima mundi, so to speak.
Yes.
Mhm.
Almost like if the universe is paint workshop,
Yep.
the software, it's as if like everything that could exist is already on that software, and you
Right.
guys were able to alchemize
Yep.
that base material into
Mhm.
something that was absolutely uh other I know I said otherworldly earlier, but really I can't find many words to describe some of your newer material that is it's almost the variety of. So one of my favorite bands is 21 Pilots,
Okay.
for
Yeah, you were
example.
telling me about some of their lyrics and stuff.
Right. So they have deep esoteric lyrics, but 21 Pilots is pretty and that's my favorite band,
I have
but
to go
they
back
are
and check them
21
out.
Pilots the entire time you're listening to them,
Yeah.
right? Another one of my favorite bands is Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir.
Yeah,
But
they're both
again,
great.
they are Dimmu Borgir the entire time that you're listening to them.
Right. Right.
When
Right.
I listen to you guys, I got fucking 21 Pilots, I got Dimmu Borgir, I got Cannibal Corpse, I got Korn, I got like I have no idea what's gonna happen next
You
when
don't. We
listening to
don't
your
either.
album.
That's what's so weird
And
about
you
it. We
don't
don't
either.
fucking know either. Because we're like, we're finding out about it as we go, just like you are, because
Right.
we're producing it, right? We're
Right.
producing it, we're making it, but we're the hands that are molding. I don't know what's behind. It was like a source. That's why I didn't know. I was like, what is this stuff with that song? I
Right.
didn't understand it. It was my song. How do I not understand my own song?
We're just the
Right.
machines behind the controls.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's like, and we're discovering stuff. We keep pulling things back as we go. So it's kind of like, what's going to happen next? Like, we're filming a video right now for Hyper Fantastic, and I have it all in my head already.
That's
The
right.
entire video. The
Hyper
entire video.
Fantastic. I could describe that song as being, I'd say, hyper fantastic.
Yeah, it's hyper
Is what I was like.
and it's I can see the entire video from start to finish. I don't have to storyboard anything. It's all right here, and he knows
Right.
that because he's worked with me for 8 years now. So he knows that if I see the video, I see the video, and that's what it's going to exactly look like once we get it laid out and we direct and we do all the video production and everything. And you know, I already like you guys can't see it because I can see it, but I can see it. It looks pretty cool.
Right. It's in
And it's
there.
like,
Right.
and it's like, but once it's there, then there's going to be things that will unfold that I didn't notice because there's stuff
Right.
that I'm not seeing all the way. So
Right.
that's
Where I
the
come
thing.
in.
And but even just
Yes.
like
We
the
see the
universal
same.
stuff.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
see the same vision pretty much.
Yeah, we have a connected vision, so it's really cool
Right.
because when we found each other in Hollywood, he was in Power Man 5000.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I was working with a bunch of different people trying to figure out like what I was going to do, and it's really funny because like we live 2 blocks away from each other, and that never happens
In Hollywood.
because that's
Right.
LA is huge. I don't know if you've been there, but it's like you can
No.
be driving for hours and still never reach the other side.
People
Right.
don't get together because of the part of town that they live in.
Yep, I had
Because if you live in the next town over, it'll take 4 hours a day to see each other in traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a friend that said he wouldn't
In
date
traffic.
girls.
Right.
Yeah, I had a friend that said he wouldn't date girls from the west side because it's too
Yeah.
far. I was like, what if she's like really beautiful and you love her? He's
Doesn't
like, I
matter.
don't care.
Like now with traffic,
far,
not like
too
this.
far. So
What? Can I ask you real quick? What year were you in Power Man 5000? Do you remember?
I started in 2000, maybe 10?
Okay,
2010,
yeah.
I think, yeah. And
Dude, all right.
Yeah.
So, all right. When you were in Power Man 5000, I was 1,000,000% in my new metal phase. But
nice.
I must have seen you.
Yeah,
Because
we've gone through and played St. Louis and all that. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
dude. So Power Man 5000. I mean, obviously, kind of the comic book sci-fi element to almost a Rob Zombie-esque yet darker form of
Yeah.
music.
He's Rob
And
Zombie's little brother, so.
yeah.
oh, is it really?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, that 100% makes sense.
Yeah.
But I don't want to say a kid. I must have been maybe oh fuck, I must have been 20. I must have been 20 years old. I still couldn't drink yet. I wasn't of legal age to drink. And I was out there listening to you and listening to your all's music, dude, because Power
Right.
Man 5000 was original. It
Yeah,
was
totally.
it was like the it was like the Hail Sagan of its day, so to speak, to where
those albums,
Yeah, I
Builders of the
co-produced
Future?
the album Builders of the Future, the
yes,
2014 album. Yeah.
I have it. It's right there.
Oh,
It's all on
nice.
myself.
Yeah.
It's with my
That's my handiwork.
CDs. That for those of
That's
you who don't
awesome.
remember, CDs are this thing that no, never mind. All right, but
Yeah.
So we were able to like connect and hook up and be like, well, we're 2 blocks away, like, and he was like, let's write a song and see what happens. So we got together, and I was going through a time with someone that was kind of bullying me a little bit. You know, how sometimes you'll meet someone that tries to bully you a little bit, and they like,
of course,
they'll just try to like do what they do. And I wrote the lyrics based on that, and we made a video, and it happened so fast because we got we were on Revolver magazine. We premiered there. Then we got signed to a label that was owned by some guy in Megadeth, and it was just like kind of like it went so fast.
It was
snowball
like 5 weeks.
effect. Yeah,
It was like so fast, and then we were on tour for years. And
5 weeks, and we were on Revolver from
And-
the time
yeah.
I sat down to write the
Yeah.
first note. Yeah.
And it was so,
see, and
it was
that's
so difficult. It was so
I
difficult.
know. I
like,
saw that Revolver. I know I saw that Revolver magazine too, because Power Man 5000. Was it Hail Sagan or
Hail
Power Man? It was
Sagan,
on
it
Sagan,
was
Hail
Hail
yeah,
Sagan was
yeah.
on
Sagan, yeah,
okay on
and it
Revolver.
was just, like, really fast, and it was difficult because I didn't so I go to Hollywood with the idea of becoming a rock star, but I didn't actually think it was gonna happen. So it was like all this
Yeah,
was happening so fast, and I just didn't like know how to handle any of it. And that's the thing about people will have ideas in their head like, oh, I want to go be famous, or oh, I want to go be a rock star, I want to go
right.
be in a music video, but then they never think about well, what happens if you actually get to any of that stuff? What are you supposed to do? And I think a lot of musicians end up on drugs and alcohol. It's hard to handle it.
Yes,
Very
that
hard to handle it.
a
Yeah.
lot of
So
people ask me why I quit human pollution, which by no means made any fruit to the point that you guys did.
yeah, that
But
doesn't
we did get to the point to where we were able to go around and play shows and have people
Yeah.
around. But I'll be damned if that was a point in my life that was revolving around drugs and alcohol. That
yeah.
was pretty much what kept
Easy to
me
fall
going.
It's
into it.
very easy. And then if you ended up
Right,
like me, you ended up on anxiety medication. And I was
right,
dealing with, I was dealing with having to like be anxious on top of like performing in front of a lot of people. And it was really scary for me. And I had a very hard time with touring. We did it for a few years and then I got sick and then all that stuff happened. And it all worked out the way
right.
it was supposed to. But
It ripped you. That sickness ripped you out
it
of
ripped
what
me
you
out.
thought you were gonna do.
Yeah, because where would I have ended up? I don't know. What would have
Right,
happened to me? Would I have been on drugs eventually? Like, I don't know what would have happened to me.
right.
So
What you were talking about is so you guys being in the studio are just as surprised to hear what you
mhm.
created as I am whenever I hear it. It
Yep.
Yeah.
reminds me of Tyler Joseph says that they ask him, "How do you write your songs? What's your process? How do you write lyrics?" He goes, "Don't ask me." And this
It
is
just
21
comes.
Pilots. He goes, "I don't know who writes the songs." He goes, I let it come to me and my hands do it or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's what and it all comes full circle. The Saturn video that I did that is just I fucking up like I think 1 million views or some shit like that.
Wow. I
Uh
haven't even seen it yet. I got to see that one
that
because I'm
that's
obsessed
the
with
most
Saturn.
refreshing thing
Yeah,
that you've
I'm
seen my
so
videos,
obsessed.
but not that one.
Um, but
But well,
let me.
I was very sick.
Oh,
Not with any kind of lupus, or I know that wasn't lupus, but I was having withdrawals,
yeah.
and because I knew I had to get off of drugs,
Right.
and I was also heartbroken because
Yeah.
I had just come. Well, I was in my dark night of the soul, so to
Yeah.
speak, and I was renovating this house,
Right.
and no one believes me when I tell them this, but I swear it's true. When I turned on the camera to do that Saturn video, I just began talking and sharing what I felt Saturn has to do with our suffering and
Right.
what we can do about it to alleviate it. And then the Rick and Morty reference and the flea experiment. I've read about these things in these
Right.
books, and I was winging it, and I kind of just did that
Yeah.
video on the fly. And then before I uploaded to YouTube, I was like, I'll add pictures to it, sure. And then just by winging it and letting it come to me without over analyzing anything, it fucking exploded. And
Absolutely.
Hmm.
that thing that you're describing that comes down and says, "Now you got it, motherfucker."
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what you got to
And
do.
that's what you tap
We're all just
into.
winging
And
it.
you and I
Yeah.
were talking
Right.
about Saturn earlier before we went live and everything. And I was telling you about my observation about Saturn. Um, so remember we talked about killing your darlings?
Yes.
So
Right.
okay, so
Tragic.
for you guys listening, if you're a writer or you're a creator, there's a saying in writing. When you're a writer, you're gonna write out everything that comes to your mind and you're gonna love all of it and you want everyone to read every piece. But then your editor comes in and says, okay, bro, this is not gonna work. This doesn't look good. This has got to go out. This is too, it just they go through that process of cutting up your art, and then you go,
Right.
oh my god, So you have to learn as an artist to kill your darlings. You have to learn that when the producer comes in and says that sounds terrible, you're taking that out. You can't get mad or offended. You let them kill your darlings, and that to me was parallel to Saturn eating his children. It was
That's
like,
what it's as above, so below. That's
right.
exactly what that is,
So
right?
it's
And
like
we have to kill
unavoidable.
parts of ourselves.
Right.
Whenever I gave up, I don't want to say gave up music because my music goes into my videos now,
Right. Right.
but now I understand what my musicianship was meant to be
Yeah.
for.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So I
And
had to
so
kill being in a band and being a singer and going and being a rock star, I had to kill that in order to do what we're doing right now. And what I
Right.
continue to do with YouTube, which actually works, whereas the music thing, it just never worked out. But I was addicted to it. I was
Yeah, well, it
addicted
is
to that.
addicting. It is addicting, yeah.
Right.
And
I
so
had an idea
Saturn,
of my own persona that I had to kill.
yes.
Yes.
And then Saturn, so when we talk about Saturn and, everyone thinks about, well, Saturn has a pull on people in a negative way, but it doesn't necessarily mean negative. It can mean
Right.
it detracts things, and by detracts, it's eating its children.
Right.
It's detracting. It's killing its darlings. It's helping to prune the garden of the creative process, and
Right.
that was one of the things that drew me to Saturn. And then all this stuff started opening up because do you remember when I was having those nightmares? I was having these nightmares when I first started meditating heavily. I would wake up about 3 o'clock in the morning. I would wake up in pitch darkness and start screaming, blood curdling screams, and I was terrified. I never had, and it wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't a nightmare like with zombies and whatever. This wasn't like that. I would like leave my body, and I would be consumed by geometric symbols, and I couldn't figure out what the hell was happening to me. And it was almost like a hallucination. And I would jump up and scream. And he told me that I was screaming Metatron's cube. And I didn't know what the hell that meant. So I had to look it up and all this stuff. So I don't know.
So wait. So you from a sleep state to a waking state brought with you the phrase Metatron's cube
Well, that's
without
what I
any
said.
prior
Yeah.
He was
education.
awake. He was awake, so he
Right.
heard it. What
And
was
he
that?
heard you.
I can remember what I saw. It was like, if you see a screensaver with a million different symbols all over it, it was like surrounded by me, and it felt like it was sucking my soul out of my body. And I was really scared because it was the first time I ever felt like I was actually dying. And I would wake up thinking I died. And I would always be like, did I die? Like, where did I go? Like, what happened? Like, I always thought I died. And he
Right.
would be like, I don't know, but you were screaming something about Metatron's cube. And I was just like, what the fuck,
Too
So
bad we didn't get a sample of that for a song. That would have been
I know, right? So I started researching Metatron's cube, and I never saw it before in my life. I didn't know anything about it. I started researching it, and um and it was really interesting because then it led me to Saturn, because
yeah.
there's the symbol on the top of Saturn. They say it's a storm or whatever, and I started really like digging
It's
into
a
that.
cube.
Well, the cube, and
Right.
it's part of like Metatron's cube. And then I was thinking, well, what could that mean? And I thought, well, there's tesseract, hypercube, a
Right.
portal. Then I started thinking about a portal, and
Right.
then like, you know, what about these scientists? By the way, biology is my major, so I'm not knocking scientists, but I have to
Of
say
course.
they're very rigid in their mindsets a lot of times. Well, because the peer review process, if they say anything outlandish, then they're considered nuts. So
That's the flaw.
yeah, so you have to be real careful as a scientist. So I was thinking,
Which is funny because they're trying to explain the stuff that we're talking about
but then they
in the
can't
first
explain
place.
it because they have a wall blocking them, because yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So I was
Uh,
thinking, well, what are they talking about? Well, with science they say, well, extraterrestrials can't visit Earth because there's no way that they could have harnessed the ability to travel that many, because then it would be so far in the past, and they wouldn't be here in the future, all the future time travel stuff. And I was like, bro, they're using a fucking portal. they're
right.
folding they're folding it like a napkin, and there's two points
Right.
coming together, and that Saturn has something to do with that. So I was starting to really research and dig into that stuff, and I became obsessed with the cube and the cross folding into the cube and the black cube and the hyper stuff. And I just started getting like into it. Like, what was that movie where the guy goes nuts? You start thinking about all that, the
Uh,
numbers, the number movie. Remember the number movie? Oh,
23.
pi,
Pi, yeah.
Oh,
pi.
pie.
I was pi for a little while
Yeah.
because I was just trying to figure out what the hell this all meant.
Right.
Why am I
And
dreaming about this?
it's connected,
Right.
but it's just not a complete clear picture yet.
No. And then I started like having the meditations where I was having the same symbol started coming up, and this symbol came up. All these symbols started coming up, and I started like surrounding myself with these symbols and trying to figure out what the heck they meant, make sense of it all. And like it got to the point where I realized that Saturn wasn't even like, it's not even a planet. What we're seeing out there is not
Right.
even what they're saying that it is.
Right.
Space does not exist in the form that they are explaining to us, the way that they write it in our books, the way
Right.
that they want us to believe. There's
Right.
something else happening, and Saturn is a big part of that. And it has
We
to do a lot with the black holes and projection of the
Right.
holographic experience. All that stuff was
I,
connected.
I, I
So
think
like,
that we have no fucking idea what space is.
no.
And
No
Carl
way.
Sagan, and this is, I mean, you guys probably already know this. I'm hoping you're fans of Carl Sagan, but
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yes.
I
what
was
am I?
named after
So
Carl.
you'll know what I'm talking about. My
Yeah,
favorite demonstration that he did was he took a piece of paper and said, "This is 2D." And if you were to take an apple and send it through the paper, you would see
The
a
slices.
2D format of that apple shaping and changing and
right.
morphing and stuff, but they would never get the concept of the apple. I am
No,
100% sure that planets are a 3D fractal
absolutely.
of something that's 5, 6, 7 dimensions that we can't possibly see any more than the bacteria in our gut can see
Right,
us.
right. And then in the VR headset, when you put the VR headset on, you can see planets in the sky. You can see all the things that you see here, but you can't go beyond what they let you render. And
Right.
so it almost feels like we're only allowed to render what we're
Yes.
allowed to render, and they tell us this is what it is. And if you try to poke, you can't poke holes in it because we can't launch ourselves onto rockets. Now they
Right.
can launch themselves onto rockets, but then they can tell us what they want to say about what they found, and maybe they're not even really doing that because they seem to all explode and go nowhere anyway. So it's like,
It's all
okay,
funding. It's all money. And
exactly. It's a
people
nice
come to
way
me
to
all
it's
the
a nice
time
way to
with
watch the dollars, So
right.
and so I had to dig into the Saturn stuff and I feel like, the black cube represents the simulation experience. And it
Perfect.
is basically um it's a, I guess, in a sense, just a figurehead of the hypercube that allows
Right.
the data to be encoded, but wherever it's being encoded, a black hole, event horizon, who knows.
Right.
And that's what that cube represents. It's reality, and our
Right.
reality is based on the system that's encoded in this. It could be a supercomputer,
Right.
and Saturn
That's a
is that.
component within the computer.
Right, and
And it's got
Saturn
a
is that
specific
symbol.
job.
Absolutely. And the fact that we're now creating AI in VR shows that those Russian nesting dolls, the one doll and the other doll and the other doll.
Yeah.
So that's the fabric of reality. So the fabric of reality is like we're somewhere nested, and now we're creating more nests, and there's more beyond and above us, and we're just kind of it just keeps happening. It's a repetition, and
Yeah.
yeah,
The
it's
Hindus
the
say it's
immortal.
turtles all the way up and it's turtles all the way down. Now, they didn't
Right,
have computer terms,
right,
but
and it's
what
it's
if it
eternal
never ends?
spiraling, eternal spiraling,
Right. Every
and
time they take an atom apart, they find out that there's more components. And then
exactly.
they take the quarks and they're
Yep,
like, oh, and I keep hearing this thing. Scientists keep going, an atom is 99% empty space. And then a year later, oh, it's 99.99 empty space. And then a year later, it's 99.9999999 empty space.
when
Before you stop
when
and say, listen,
yeah,
there's probably nothing there.
yeah, and and
There's
and
everything
and the
there.
other thing is
And
that
everything.
and in science they like to say, well, we hypothesize, but we don't know. If you read
Right.
Carl Sagan's book, I think it was the pale blue dot. There was a little foreword in there about
Beautiful.
science. There was a section in there about the Higgs boson, and it was about that they haven't found it. This was back in the 80s, probably. They haven't found it. He
Right.
doesn't know if they'll ever find it. He dies. Life goes on. It is discovered with the Large
Right.
Hadron Collider and all that. And and then they had that whole debacle with calling it the God particle, but the physicists actually called it the goddamn particle. But Time Magazine didn't want them saying damn, so they chopped it up into God, and
I
everybody
didn't
thinks
know
that
that.
thing is God, and it's ridiculous.
They called it
So
the God particle because Time magazine didn't want to use the word damn.
yeah.
Yep.
So the physicist that was focusing on discovering this particle was like that goddamn particle because it was so elusive, it was slipping
Right.
through their fingers. And so when they wrote the article for Time Magazine to let people know, like, hey, they found the particle, Time Magazine goes, you can't say goddamn. You can't say goddamn in this magazine, and you can't say that to these people. We're gonna chop it down to God. So they chopped it down to God. And then everybody, the people who don't understand how to like I guess, extrapolate data and process it and understand it, take things for face value,
Right.
what the whole media system is built on right now,
Right.
they took it for face value and they thought that they found the creator and
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 people will
Nothing
accept that too. They'll say, "Oh,
it
they
is.
discovered the reason for life. They discovered
I see it
God."
all the time in science circles. It's, oh, the God particle, and the
Well,
God.
that creates headlines, and so
Yeah,
everybody was checking it out.
And there's so
right,
many people that don't know that, and then the physicist gets so mad about it. He's
right,
like, "Stop calling it the God particle." The guy's like an atheist, first of all. He doesn't even believe in God and whatever. But it's like it's not. It's the goddamn particle because
right,
it's so goddamn elusive. And then
Hmm.
right.
they finally found it. They finally found it, and then of course the media turned it into something else. And
As
but
they
I
do
guess
everything.
it's like no matter what they say is in an atom, you can't really believe it because who knows if they're even telling the fucking truth because they doll it up.
Right. Well, the
They doll
Higgs
it up.
boson, the reason they found the Higgs boson was because they found the shadow of the Higgs boson. So they assumed that it must have been
Right.
there, but so quick they couldn't discover it.
They
But that
couldn't.
little pocket of energy where something was is now empty. So
Yeah.
they're like, okay, that's that. That's where that was. We missed it, but it must be there. The same way they do with dark matter. Dark
Exactly.
matter doesn't exist. There's no such thing as dark
Right.
matter.
Right. And
It's
we
just
see
that.
someone writing right there. They never found it. They didn't find it. They're
Right.
right. Because
Right.
you don't even know if what they're saying is true because if they're dolling it up to make it sound nicer, how much other bullshit are they telling?
And
So it's like
dialing it up
you
is
can't
what they
know.
do. Right. So
Right.
planets and solar systems and galaxies for the most part, especially the big arms of galaxies,
Right.
we once thought that there was a big bang because everything's expanding, so it must have come from a single dot. But then we realized that actually galaxies are doing whatever the fuck they want.
They do what
So
they want.
instead of admitting that these things are alive and moving as an organism, we force dark. We oh, it's dark matter, and they say, "What is dark matter?" They're like, "We don't know. It's dark."
We
Can
don't know
you?
it's dark, and we can't prove it, but here it is, and we can't prove a lot of things, but we're gonna go with this one, and that's what they go down
Because they're
the hill they die on, and it's ridiculous, you
'cause they're
know?
so worried about being wrong that
Right,
they'll just die
Right.
on the hill.
right,
Yeah,
and
Right.
the thing about like
or looking stupid.
and the thing about the Big
Right.
Bang is when I went to the university to study biology as my major, they were pushing that, and I didn't buy it. And I was that student that the professors they loved that I got really good grades. They hated that I questioned everything.
Yes, of
And it
course,
was like they wanted to get me the fuck out of their classroom, you know. What
dude.
stop raising your hand. Stop
I
fucking taking this shit apart, you know?
I
And
think I must have been like maybe 12 years old whenever they mentioned the Big Bang, that all matter came from a nothing, and I couldn't accept it because there must be a consciousness there. And they
right,
say no, the Big Bang give planets, and then life formed, and then consciousness formed. And I'm like, wait a
right.
second though, ideas and thoughts that can come from nothing easily, and it
Easily.
does
We're doing
every
it right
moment.
now.
Yeah,
We're doing
but
it right
but
now.
there's no scientific ever any kind of evidence that shows matter coming from nothing.
Right.
So we
Well,
do,
again,
however, have
doesn't that
evidence.
just defy their own science, the thermodynamics,
Yes.
the second rule of thermodynamics? Things cannot be created from nothing. Energy
Right.
can't be created or destroyed. So, as a scientist, are you telling me that that's it, or is it the other thing? Because it contradicts each other. And so then I thought about it, and I said, okay, so if I'm going to give credence to your Big Bang theory, perhaps the Big Bang theory is the day that the creators of the simulation turned on the fucking computer.
Turned on the
On
fucking
the
turned it on.
computer.
computer,
Yeah,
right? So it's
It
like,
was already there. The
bang,
hard drive was already there.
yeah, it
Like
was
Paint
there.
Workshop, everything's
Right.
already there.
Turn
But
the
now
lights on.
somebody clicked on the little bucket tool and made it blue.
Like,
Eh,
hey Frank, don't forget to turn the lights on so we can get this thing powered up. Get it
Yes.
powered up. Boom, it's
boom.
on. And then the little dinky scientists inside the little Sims simulation, the game where you make people work, and they go, oh, something turned on. It's a Big Bang.
That explained the
It's
Right.
chicken and the egg if it was all pre-programmed before it was
right.
turned on,
All those
and
things
then
get
boom,
Right.
everything's on at
exactly,
once, the chicken and the
exactly.
egg.
So it's
Right.
kind of like that's what I was saying. And so then of course they were like, bro, the stuff that you're talking about, you can't say this. And then when the things I wanted to study and research, they just were just like, they were besides themselves with me. And so when I was
Right.
done with that,
They
I
didn't say
went back to
they're
music.
not saying you're wrong. They're saying that you can't say that.
Right. You can't say that. And you're not allowed as a scientist to be creative. And I had the both sides.
But
So
we can
Right.
create a virtual reality world and just turn it on, and it's all
yeah.
there. So
But being
Right.
on
what's the
What's the
difference?
yeah.
difference?
But being on the spectrum, I use both sides of my brain like constantly. I'm not a one-sided brain person, and that's I'm always going like this all the
Right.
time. It's like if I'm not creating and painting and drawing and making music, I'm studying and I'm researching and I'm figuring out like really crazy, like deep science shit all the time, blah 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 blah.
Right.
So they're just like, "Yo, you got to pick a side," and I'm like, "No."
No.
And so I'm like, "No." So I realized science at the time. I'm back in science now, but back then it wasn't for me. I had to go do something else. I went and did music. That wasn't right. Now I'm doing the two things together, and I got this
Right.
great balance. And I'm basically like no, fuck you. I can say and think about what I want.
Right.
And if you
Right.
don't like it, that's just too fucking bad. Like this is
Right.
what I'm gonna do.
What you're describing is what so Jeremy Narby went through this where he was hanging out with hippies at nighttime and hanging out with anthropologists in the day.
Oh,
And
that's
there came an
awesome.
awkward moment when he was hanging out with some hippies and scientists walked in to get to the cafeteria area. And this is the 60s, so they
Yeah,
were, and he realized he had to put on his hood because his colleagues were over there, and he's discussing the universe with these people, and then he's discussing the universe with these people, and he
right,
started struggling with that, like, wait a second, we're all
right.
talking about the same shit here.
Hmm.
Exactly. It's all the same shit. And I
When
think
there's egos involved, though,
yeah.
Yeah.
people,
Well,
yeah.
that's the thing. And
Well, what's
it's funny.
ironic is those hippies would be happy to have the scientists come sit down.
Oh yeah,
However,
Right.
not the other way around
Well, I
though.
was telling you
exactly.
earlier about the
But the
theory.
hippies aren't being paid by the government.
Yeah,
So
Ah, that's the that's
that's
it.
what it is. And I
Right.
was telling you earlier about my big toe, the
Yeah,
theory
yeah.
of everything, the theory of everything. And
I just
Thomas
ordered
Campbell,
that.
yeah, Thomas Campbell was the scientist who was working on Bob Monroe's, gateway stuff before it was even anything. He was like the original scientist, and he wrote this fantastic book. And I sent you a photo of it, by the way, so you can
Yeah,
check it out.
I ordered
That's
it. Yeah.
that's the kind of guy he is.
Right.
That guy's a scientist. He's as scientisty as a scientist can get. He's got all the accolades, the PhDs. He's done all the Stanford or whatever universities, and he's
Right.
been through all of the thick and thin of like being in science and being peer reviewed, and he
Do you,
does like all that. But
do you
he
think
also understands that there's another part of this thing that
mhm.
scientists are ignoring,
right.
and that if they don't bridge the two things together, we're never going to figure it out
Right.
because it's. And then the observation theory, of course, says we're not going to figure it out anyway because we're
Right.
observing it and it changes.
Well,
But
do you
it's
think
not
that
true.
Carl Sagan was censored because
Yeah,
he was around before Rupert Sheldrake, Jeremy Narby, Graham I shouldn't say Graham Hancock, but a lot of these prestigious scientists like
Right.
Narby and Rupert Sheldrake are now coming forward in their old age
Yeah.
after having all of their prestigious, like Carl Jung wouldn't release Red Book till after he died. He couldn't
Right.
do it.
Right. We couldn't
But
do it.
Carl Sagan was before those two men. Do you think that he had wild ideas that they
of
Absolutely.
course. Yeah.
Absolutely. If you watch his Cosmos series, I have the whole entire DVD set. It's amazing.
what's the DVD?
Cosmos.
No, I'm kidding,
Oh,
but
I
I
collect.
What's it?
So I collect DVDs. Okay, so I'm really rebellious, and I am fighting against. I'm fighting against the streaming networks and the fact that they keep raising their prices and they're fucking
And
people
deleting
over. They're
movies off,
deleting things. They're
censoring
censoring.
movies.
So I started a DVD collection. I have over 1,000 DVDs, and I've had it for a really long time. And I keep adding to it. And every time they take a movie down, I buy it and I say "fuck
We buy
you."
like 5 DVDs a
So
week.
I basically have the
you
entire
you
cosmos.
two are the only soul people keeping it alive right now.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
And
to because
CDs, by the way.
yeah, we have to because when it's all gone, we're gonna have the entire collection, and then we're gonna open up a really cool like goth metal like blockbuster kind of a store, and
Oh
everyone's
my
gonna come in
yeah.
and rent our
Hey,
DVDs.
Yeah.
call it goth metal blockbuster.
Yeah,
That's fucking great.
yeah,
And
goth
I
metal.
feel the same way you guys do from CD to streaming service because if my electricity goes out or my hard drive fries or whatever,
Right.
none of these are gonna go anywhere.
They're not gonna go
Yeah.
anywhere. No one's gonna come and say like, um, "Oh, you're not allowed to say this anymore. This is really everyone's
Right,
offended by this. We're gonna
right.
delete this part
You
out."
can't take
Hmm.
chapter
And
16 out of this bitch.
right. And I've actually thought about going back and buying some old dictionaries and encyclopedias just to have them in case some
Right,
of those
Because they're constantly
they're
changing it to
deleting
make
it. They're
to
deleting
yep,
to
it.
push their own
Yeah. So
narratives.
just like
right.
have some, you know, if damn the fucking Mandela effect, we're gonna have that thing in our hands so no one can say
The-
it never happened. And
What he just said, sterile narrative. I'm asking you right now if you guys make a song called "Sterile Narrative." That's got a ring to it. I'm just saying, the observation that's tight as fuck.
that's funny. Well, we'll figure it out.
All
But
right.
I think that that stuff is important to keep.
Yeah.
So it's something, and I enjoy the tangible effect of collecting something. So for me, that's kind of
Yeah.
a cool thing. But yeah, I have the Cosmos, Carl Sagan Cosmos.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Carl Sagan. So like, yeah.
Yeah,
So he. I remember that he talked about aliens, and then like overnight, he was literally not only not talking about aliens, but actually kind of Neil deGrasse Tyson the whole idea. That's a
yeah.
verb, by the way. Neil deGrasse Tyson ing something
I
is a
I
verb.
ju- I just talked about him recently on our radio show. I'm not a fan. I was at one point, and I stopped being a fan. I'm not
Yeah.
a big fan of heads of state. I'm not a big fan of people that are paid to have
Oh, he's a
a
dickhead.
narrative.
Paid to have
You know?
opinions. Yeah.
Yeah,
He,
I'm not a fan of colored down and erased opinions or built opinions or things like that. So I'm not a fan. I think that Carl Sagan was put under a lot of pressure for his time. In the time that he was around, you couldn't do anything unless you stayed in line with what
yes.
everybody said. So he really he missed out on an opportunity to come forward later on by dying. But the good thing about dying is he gets to come back and do it again. But the bad thing about it is that now maybe this time around on his other in the other
Well,
timeline,
if you have a
he's out there rocking it right now.
if you have a
But
I think
producer, you're
so.
being told what to do. So
yeah, producers
Right.
tell you what to do.
yeah,
Especially if you're on TV.
yeah.
So
So
Yes.
he made some sort of a deal somewhere where he was being told what to do.
yeah, and if you're on
Right.
TV, you're not being authentic. I'm sorry.
Right.
You are not
Well,
being authentic. They will not let you
No, they
because
won't.
just like
right.
when we had a label or when we had a manager,
They
we
won't let
were
you do
not
it.
allowed to say or do or produce the way we wanted to. It just was not allowed. So
Right.
now we're independent and we say whatever the fuck we
It's the
want.
men in the suits
Right.
and the Apple laptop staring at you.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
So you're like you're not going to be allowed. Carl Sagan wasn't allowed
To
to
say what
express
he
No
himself.
felt.
way.
No, there's no
Right.
way. And it did come out in little bits, but it
I
got
wish he would have written a book to come out after he died. Well, fuck, maybe
Yeah.
he did. And
Maybe
he may have, but
his family might have
look at
kept
they
it.
Tesla.
might,
No one
yeah,
knows.
you don't know if they're suppressing it, and you know, there's no way to know. But all we can do is really kind of keep it in the back of our mind that what we see on TV or what we have presented to us, we have to question everything. Make
Every
sure that
right.
everything is what it's supposed to be. Because if you don't question, even question us,
Yeah.
like what are we saying? Like
That's
question
what the Buddha
everything.
said. Right.
Question everything.
I tell everybody as often as I can that I'm not that I am also a student and my show
Mhm.
is meant for entertainment.
Right.
And
Right.
I can repeat that all day. I could put it at the beginning of the video. It doesn't matter. People still take the show very seriously.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
And
for sure.
and I admire that and I appreciate that, but I want everyone to know that we're learning together.
Right.
In
Right.
Mhm.
fact,
Yeah.
the last 3 videos have been catapulted because of viewers' ideas, and there's certain things that I didn't know about, and it takes a community to do so, you know.
Right. Right.
And
Mhm.
Exactly.
with Carl Sagan, I feel like, and this is I have no proof, but I feel like he wasn't paid to say a narrative. I feel like he was threatened
Hmm.
after he was talking about aliens are self-evident.
Hmm.
Like that, of course they're here. We are. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't they?
Right.
And
So
then
the
all of a
more that
sudden,
he tried to went off the track, they were pushing him back on. Like, no,
Mhm.
you gotta do it this way.
That's why high-ranking government officials on their deathbed, they always come out and
Get it
say,
yeah,
out.
"Hey,
They
here's
get
the
it out.
reality." Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
right.
Yeah.
they're
And
like,
there's
"Hey,
nothing to gain on your deathbed. And
yeah."
Yeah.
Well, what are they going to do? Kill them if they
Yeah. There's
release
nothing
the
they
yeah,
can
truth?
do to you at that point. So you got to come out and just say
They
like,
do it all the time. And
and
that
yeah.
news always gets suppressed too
yeah.
somehow too. I
And
bet a lot of more people say stuff and that gets
Oh,
And I
suppressed.
was a
sure.
little nervous about first releasing the CD because I was like, I said to him a few times, like, what if the fucking Men in Black come to our house and they come and get me? Like,
Mhm.
because
Well,
Fly
that's the
Star,
key with art, though. Like George Carlin
yeah,
got away with it because
right,
he was a comedian.
right,
And,
Yeah.
Y-Files gets away with it because it's entertainment, you
right,
know. And
right,
you guys
right.
will get away with it because it's music.
But like
However, if you're a scientist,
Fly Seraphim Wings, when I wrote that lyric with his lyrics, I was sitting on the hammock in the garden, and I didn't know what they meant. I had to look it up, and I didn't know what was
Really?
I didn't know I didn't know what any of it meant. And then later on, we started having wars around the world happen, and it was a warning about war, and I didn't know that.
Wow.
And I said, well, what if the CIA finds out that I'm tapping into like stuff, and they know, like, what are they gonna do to me? Like, so I was always saying to people, if anything happens to me, I didn't do it. I'm not gonna hurt myself. If anything happens, I swear I'm not. I'm not that kind of
Right.
person. Well, because I don't believe that suicide is a way out. It's actually a way to get right back in. So if you kill yourself, in my mind, you go there and you get to the waiting room and they go, well, why the hell did you do that? You got to go back now, and it's going to be harder. And then you get back, and
Right.
then you become one of those people that goes, God, life's so hard, and you don't know why. It's because you checked out. You shouldn't do that. You got to get to the end. You got to finish the
Right.
game. Got to finish
It's
the
like an
fucking game.
extra
So
credit test.
Yeah.
Then you have to try to dig
So
yourself
I
out of
would
it.
never do that. I would never do it. If anything happens, it wasn't me. And I don't. And the CIA, if you're listening, I always say hi to the CIA when we do our radio show on Fridays.
hey,
I say
right.
hi, hi CIA, hi NSA. Like, I know you're
Wh- uh,
listening.
whenever I put out my video Systems of Control, there became a string of comments where they were saying "Rest in peace, Joey P." and and they weren't no, and they weren't mocking. They were saying, and then there was a couple follow up comments like, "Hey, if you don't mind, can you put out a statement saying that you're not suicidal?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm not on anybody's radar. I promise you that. They're worried about what Joe Rogan's saying. They don't
Right,
Yeah.
care
and
about me."
Elon Musk and stuff like that. Elon Musk's probably the one that's gotta worry the most right now because he's got a lot of people that invested in him, and
Right,
that's like mafia shit. They come and get you and you don't pay your bills and all that kind of crap, so
right,
I think that's who's gotta worry, but I was just worried
The
in the
worst
sense
they'll
of
do is start shadow banning
yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
something appears to be
that
getting too big.
Yeah,
that's worried
yeah,
about.
they'll censor you, but
Hmm.
I don't think I was being paranoid, I was just making a joke about it to him, like, "Oh my god, like, what did I just do?" And, "What did we just do?" And
Right.
so, but
But
then it
so,
was fine, it was
speaking
fine.
of your lyrics, and I wanted to say this, and I forgot to say this in the beginning, but three came and drank up the wine. Six showed up and picked up nine. I couldn't help but feel it's got a very deep esoteric meaning
Oh,
to it
yeah.
that can't be deciphered. But if you're one of these people who take things literally, it sounds like three Chad bros showed up to the party and drank up all the booze. So they had to send. So we had to go for a beer run. Six of us had to go for a beer run, but we came back with strippers.
Hell
It's a
yeah.
little-
And that's what's so funny about music is the lyrics are so subjective.
yeah,
I could be singing about the moon and someone says, "Wow, she's singing about starfish." Like it's really whatever you
right,
decide. But I didn't know what it was because at the time, the universe was writing that stuff as I was so I didn't know, but then I was like wine because I don't drink alcohol. I've never been an alcoholic. I never had a problem with alcohol. I stopped drinking 6 years ago because it made me feel
right.
shit. I didn't want to do it
Oh
anymore.
yeah,
And I was like, why am I singing about wine? And I realized I looked it up. What is the metaphysical meaning of wine? And it said it was the connection between body and spirit, and it was like the wine
the
signified
blood.
that yeah, it's the connection. And I went, oh, okay. So
Yeah,
if three came and is drinking up the wine, three is using the connection of body and spirit. Six
the
shows
Holy
up
Trinity. Right.
six shows up to put it together, and then nine creates the fun. And I was like, holy shit.
And then you
And
have
then
the
I was like,
Metatron's cube with the nine.
yes. And so I looked into it and I was like, whoa. And then it
Those
was,
are those moments where you're like, oh, that's what I was talking
that's
about.
what I was talking about. Like, oh wow, thanks for letting me know. And so 369, and then it was um, you know, um she came from a smart design. He showed up but then fell behind. And I think it was about like the way that people are battling gender and how
Right,
there's this it's unnecessary to like even like think about it because you're so neutral when you go back. And then you're here,
right,
and then it was like the great architect didn't know you were coming home and is like, okay, I'm ready. And
right,
it wasn't death, it was ascension.
right.
And so through the different verses, you can hear this person ascending. It's slowly like you're losing their voice and they're
But at the same time,
crackling.
the voice is becoming more digital,
Yeah,
Right.
which is actually breaking apart.
that's my
Yeah.
favorite shit about the song was the
So it's being
evolution from
dragged away.
child. It went
You
Yeah,
from
go
child
from
to woman to robotic creature.
you
So,
go
absolutely.
from
let me bounce this
36
one
bit
off of
to
you.
8-bit.
Right. And so
Right,
you're going in there, and then it's all of a sudden it's always knew I'd make it through this, and I knew you'd be right here. And it was source. I didn't know it was here with me the whole time. I never
right.
knew it was even there.
All
And
right.
always knew that I could do it. I had to drop my fears. And I have found everything we think we become. I had been spending my whole life thinking negative thoughts. I had been
Right.
spending my whole entire life thinking that the world was against me, and I had been thinking that everything was built for me to be an obstacle and that it was never going to work out. And then when I got sick and I had my NDE where I was told I was going to die, and I had
Right.
felt like I died, and then I emerged as, and that's the song that came out of it. And it was like,
So,
I
so
had no idea.
right.
No
Speaking
idea.
of lyrics being subjective and personal to each person, and not to continue to fanboy over your lyrics here, but the whenever you hit I have found everything that we think we become. That was completely different for me than it is for it might be different for everybody, but for me it sounded like I've been abandoned by people, and without their help, I have found everything that we thought we
Yeah,
could have become.
yeah.
Even though you've been abandoned, it turns out that those people were holding you back.
That's really
And
cool.
and
Yeah.
and that's what made my
And
come
that's
come
what I
out
love
of there.
about music. It's so subjective because these words came, and it can mean 100 million different things to everyone. And so the way that I interpret it was just based on like me trying to figure out what the hell I was saying because I didn't know.
Right,
And
right.
then what you say, it's like it can mean something different to everyone. But I think in the end, what the final meaning of it is that there it's you always have this anchor, and there's
Yeah,
this thing that's with you and with all of us, and we're all connected by it. All of us are the same. I am the
right,
same as you are the same as me, him, everyone here.
We are all the walrus.
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And it's like, what it comes down to is that it's like we create this whole thing. It's all
We
part of like
project reality.
we do. It's all coming through us constantly, and it's connected to all of that stuff I was saying before about with Saturn and the geometric symbolism I was like having nightmares about, and like it's
Right,
all connected into one thing. And I'm still trying to piece it together. Like I'm not saying that I'm at the tip top of the thing and I'm floating up here.
right.
I know it all. I don't, and
Never
I'm always
will be
finding
in
new
a
stuff.
human body. It won't ever happen,
It
and
can't. It
that's
can't.
the
Yeah.
fun. That's the
Yeah.
magic of it, and that's
It
the
is.
fun of it is that we will never reach the end of
No.
it.
That's how
And
we go into the next step.
right, and with us projecting reality, I can't help but think that again, going back to science, the way they dodge that is incredible.
Yeah.
So I'm not against the multi-universe theory, but with the way they came up with the multi-universe theory was from the double slit experiment. Whenever they
Right.
found out that particles don't exist until a wave function of
Wave function
nothingness
collapsing constantly.
collapses.
Right.
So
Right.
when I
Right.
saw that immediately, I was like, okay, we project reality. But they were like, no, we're going to go way the fuck left field and say that there's multiple universes. And I'm over here like, wait a second. Occam's razor is scraping me up the fucking nutsack right now because what is more likely? The fact that consciousness projects reality or that there's multiple universes of infinite versions of us, which again, I'm not against, but
Well,
if
I
you
think
look at
it can
Occam's
be
razor,
nested together. It can be nested together. So
yes,
it can be. So that's what I think it is that they're failing to put the two together.
the two together.
Yeah, they
Right.
go together. So there's infinite dimensions.
Right. Dimensions. That's probably the
Dimensions.
right word for it.
Right, right, right. But
When
they don't know
Narby,
that, or they don't want to
right.
say it. Right, right.
When that anthropologist Jeremy Narby went down to Brazil, his main goal was to find out this ayahuasca that causes shamans to clearly be able to heal people that they proved that they could. He
Right.
wanted to know, is the hallucinogen waking up a part of the human mind to have them have this ideas, or is it so that the plants are actually delivering that message to their
Yeah.
brain? And
Yeah.
that, spoiler alert, I don't to spoil the end of the book, and which the whole book is good, so I can't spoil anything. It turns out at the end of it, he had to come to the conclusion that it absolutely took both like a yin and yang for that experience to take place. You
Yep.
can't
Mhm.
have one without the
You
other. The
can't have
mountain
one
is
without
high.
the other. You can't have one without the other. And that's the same thing
Right.
with multiverse theory and all this other stuff. It's kind of like it all connects. And when you're a scientist, if you're discounting the other half of it, you can never truly understand the theory because you're
Yes.
blocking
Right.
out so much that's necessary for you to, flesh it all out in a sense.
Right.
And that's why science seems to have really like hit a wall in a lot of areas because they're not allowing themselves to expand into more metaphysical thinking,
Right.
which is part of our reality, whether they like it or not. It's here.
Mhm.
Right.
People take mushrooms, people take LSD, people do that stuff, and they're going to open doors. And even though the DMT machine elves will close the door and tell you no and get the fuck out, and
Yeah.
that's what they'll do. They still can access a little, you can get your little foot in the door and open it and peek in. And they are trying to stop that. And they are trying to
Right.
discount that. And it proves that there's another fabric. And Gerhard de Hooft, who's one of my favorite theoretical physicists from Denmark, he's like a little, he reminds me of Albert Einstein, but he's like alive and well right now, and he
Yes.
he says that there's an underlying fabric of quantum physics that we haven't quite opened yet that will
Right.
explain all this stuff that we can't figure out, explain how it works into, because modern physics says, well, you have to fit everything into this equation, and if it doesn't fit into this equation,
Right.
then we're not going to look at it,
And it
and
has to be matter.
right. And so he says, well, to get there and to prove the theories that he and Leonard Susskind are working on, you have to find that other layer. And he
Yes.
doesn't say metaphysics because he's not allowed to. But I
Right.
know that's what he fucking
But he
means.
leads you to that idea through
Right.
logic.
I think
And
that's what he means. Yeah. And
it's like
he's not allowed to say it.
right. And Carl Jung was bold when he said that psychology is void without spirit. And I feel like it's the same with science. Science is void without religion
Right.
because religion has been describing things like quantum physics for, well, since before we can fucking remember.
Mhm.
Forever.
And they understood DNA and they understood a
Yeah.
lot of things that, but they didn't have scientific terminology. They didn't have jargon, so to speak. Now Carl Jung did, and
Right.
whenever he discovered, he was like, "There's a huge flaw in the middle of our cycle. We can't help people unless we acknowledge that consciousness, that
Right.
ideas, that dreams are actually a thing, and we have
Right.
to redefine the word real." Because we
Right.
seem to have changed the word real to mean tangible matter,
Mhm.
Exactly.
and
Like
it's
you have
not.
to have it. If I don't have it in my hand, it doesn't exist.
Right,
Well, what I don't have in my hand is the electricity that's flowing through my body and making my heart pump right now.
right.
You
Same as the
know?
chakras, right? You
And the
can't open up
thoughts.
a
Right,
body
right, right.
and
And the
find a
thoughts.
chakra any more than you can open up a brain and find an idea.
Right. I have stuff in here that is just it's just everywhere. And how
Right,
can I prove to you that it's there? I can't show it to you. It's
That's
right,
what
just
a song is.
It's just in there. And so
right,
it's like,
Yeah.
how dare they say that what you can't see doesn't exist? Well, then how the fuck do they explain gravity?
right,
You
right.
know, if
It's
I
just
if
right,
I
right,
take this thing and I drop it, there's
right.
gravity. Okay, that's proof, but I can't see it.
And they reduce it down. They say, oh, it's a wave function, or it's a wave particle, or
Oh
it's a
yeah,
this or that.
absolutely.
And it comes to a time when you have to say, what if we don't have a word for it?
There's
What
no
if
word.
what if
Right.
we have to start over? And in
Right.
fact, that brings back to the Big Bang. If we accept the fact that the Big Bang is a fallacy, we might have to start over,
Yeah.
and that's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, it's
You
okay.
know, I mean,
It's
how
okay.
many of us start over in our lives from
All the
scratch?
time. Do you
Always.
know how many lives I've lived in my lifetime? I can't even count
Right.
back.
Yeah.
Like, and that sucks sometimes because you go back and you find someone that you knew like 10 years ago, and they think you're the same person you were, and you're not the same person you were, and
No.
then and then it feels awkward because you gotta explain, oh, I'm not into that anymore. Oh, I've like just changed a lot, and and that's
Right.
like the thing is like we have to change. That is part of this reality,
Yeah.
and science is like going no, no, it's fighting it, and we can't fight that. We need to just really honestly allow the
Right.
evolution. And that's going to come from accepting the metaphysical.
Right.
And
So
that's
so what do you think it is? Do you think and it might be a combination of both, and it seems to always be. But do you think it's a laziness on the part of having to go through and actually update all the textbooks and have to rewrite the paper? Or do you think it's hubris and ego and pride over one's
I
work?
think it's control. I think it's control. I think that it's ego. Humans like need to have control. Because we don't have to do anything that we're doing. that none of this has to happen. I've said to him a few times, why don't we just redo the whole government? Why don't we just like clean it down, like flush it down the drain, clean the
They'd
Okay,
counters?
like to
burn
be
it
where
down
they're
and
at.
sweep
Yeah,
out the ashes.
They're making billions of
they're,
dollars sitting there doing.
so they've got the, but even the
Right.
dollars don't mean anything if it comes
No,
down to it. We can wash that away too. Like, let's wash it all away
Well,
and
they
rebuild.
lose it. They lose
but the
the
people at
money.
the top don't want to lose it.
Because
Right.
there's something I found about, so there's some politicians in my family, and I was exposed to politics as I don't get involved in it. It's something that's not a part of my life. It's not in my timeline.
Right.
But I was raised around some political people. And what I found, my experience with these people who I love dearly, what I will say is that the theme that I find in people who go into office and elections and all that, the theme is always selfishness, um,
Yeah.
self gain, and
Hmm.
power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Tribal mentality.
even if it's just becoming the mayor of your town, well, why are you doing that? Because you want to be able to park there and not have to pay for the parking ticket. Like, there's always some
Right.
reason that really isn't the great. And even if they go in with the idea that I'm going to go in and help, they will be possessed by all of the shiny, wonderful
Right.
fringe
Well,
benefits that come along with it. So
what I think is
yeah,
dangerous about politics is that psychologically speaking, psychopaths have a common trait. They seek power.
yeah,
So if
Hmm.
you create a job like we've created, politicians don't volunteer. They're not volunteers. So if you think that we've created a politician, this job where somebody creates laws, delegates regulations, and they have a system, they make control. Well, what's going to attract more psychopaths than that?
right, exactly. So you're basically turning on the light for the moth, you
Yes,
know,
that's a
and
great metaphor for it.
it's like here we are
Psychopath moth.
we're capturing all these moths. It's like, well, what's the end game? And it's that's the really, I think, the crux of it is that we're never going to do what we're saying in that arena, because
Right,
that power and control is so intoxicating,
right,
and it is so intoxicating that it's so hard to defy that. And so, like, they're not going to allow us to bridge the gap of science and metaphysics and solve some of this stuff, because that takes away their power, and that threatens them. And
right.
so, that
Well, they're
that's
not going to change it because it's not broken for them.
it's not broken for them. It's working for them.
Yeah.
They've got us in a wheel,
They
and it's
can
going
they
around,
can
and we're like
control
little
us with the
cogs.
beliefs that
Yeah,
they've set out. And
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's like that movie. What was the movie? With the glasses. They live.
They live,
and
yeah.
and and it
yeah,
was, it was procreate, marry, obey,
right.
buy, consume. It's the same system. I feel like a lot of movies gave us all the answers. We just didn't listen.
Sure,
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
just didn't
right,
listen. And that movie was a warning. It was like, hey,
Because those people were downloading the information too.
yeah, they were. And it was
right,
just like, okay, so like they want us to just get married. They want us fighting, fight with your boyfriend, fight with your husband, fight with your wife,
right,
get divorced, deal with all, have children,
Mm.
have your kids go to school, deal with back to school
And
sales.
spend a lot
right,
of money doing it.
And you're getting so
right.
embroiled into all this stuff that, and I'm not saying having a family is a bad thing. I don't think that at all. But I'm saying,
Of
like,
course,
from the perspective of getting sucked into that narrative, they control it from the top. They've got the strings. You're the puppets, and
right.
and
Well,
and
there's a
you're gonna
certain
get victim.
kind of family they want you to have.
Yeah,
It's not a tribe anymore. It's not the way that the Aztecs lived. It's not the way the Native Americans lived. They want you in a little box, and they
they
say
want you.
your family
Right,
should be 5 people,
Yeah.
and you should have this sort of income, and then
yep,
you should send your kids
to their
over
schools.
to us so we can teach them
We're gonna
because
raise
Yeah.
them.
you
We're gonna raise them.
Indoctrination.
Yeah, we're gonna raise them. We're gonna tell them what they believe. We're gonna explain the words to them, what they mean. We're gonna give them all the labels and the tags, because labels and tags are very important in this third dimension
right
space. You got to
categorization,
have the
right,
labels and the tags, and then we're gonna create the consumers that we need, because these
Hmm.
consumers, they get their social security number. You get your number, and
right.
now you are out
They
there
uh
and
they
consume,
create
consume, consume.
consumers.
Yeah, they create it,
Yeah.
and
Labels
and
and tags create
and when you
um,
try to like
consumers.
defy that, that's when they start labeling you as crazy. They start labeling you as mentally ill. They start trying to push medications down your throat.
Right.
And I'm not
Hmm.
saying that medication isn't good for some people, because I'm sure that it is, but the amount that they push it to try to tamp
Yeah.
down the tamp down the the collective consciousness.
Right.
Where
Oh,
everyone starts opening up.
if you've got a serious condition, you're going to need medication. But a doctor will prescribe Xanax to somebody who's just having a hard time.
All the time.
Mhm.
Or how about in my case when I had they turned out it wasn't lupus, it was a gluten allergy and my ovaries were being weird. And guess what? Well, you need an antidepressant. No, I don't. I'm not depressed. I've never been depressed in my entire life. Why are
Right,
you trying to
right.
give me now? Well, that will help with all the weird stuff you're feeling. And I'm like,
Well,
I don't think
the
so.
choice is an antidepressant or a drug that has side effects that can kill you. So
Right, but if you're
Right,
depressed,
yeah,
but if
they're
you're
gonna get you down one way or
yeah, but if
another.
right.
you're depressed. Yeah, sure, take an antidepressant because you're depressed. Take an
Mhm.
antidepressant.
Yeah.
But I wasn't depressed, so why are you trying to give me this drug? And it was just
Mhm.
like, you know, everything that they tried to give me. I tried a few things. I didn't try all of it. None of it worked. And what ended up working was changing my diet. We did a 3 month long food elimination thing. I
Right,
figured out what was bugging me. I took out that stuff. I got a very pure, clean diet, and that fixed
right.
all the problem. And all of that stuff went away. So I mean, like it
You
was that
kind of
simple.
inspire me to lay off the gas station food. As a construction worker, it becomes difficult to
Oh,
live
I know.
holistically.
We
But
on
are
tour,
you guys
like
familiar
every
with?
day.
Hard, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, do
Yeah.
you guys know about Dr. Sebi?
No.
Mm-mm.
He was a doctor and he started curing people of AIDS and cancer, utilizing different plant medicines and
Oh,
food,
wow.
just straight up diet.
Mhm.
So the U.S. government sued him, and but he went into
Wait,
court.
they sued him?
They sued him, right? All the pharmaceutical industries and stuff. They said he's giving out false information. We're going to sue him and
Oh,
ruin his career, right?
yeah.
And so
Unpaid.
on the day of his court case, he didn't hire a lawyer. Instead, about 3,000 or so people showed up to the courtroom, of which about 400 of them testified that I have been cured of AIDS. I have been cured of cancer because of Dr. Sebi's program, right?
Wow.
So he won the court case by a landslide default,
Yeah,
and this
that's
pissed
awesome.
off a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, I'm
So what
sure.
happened was he won the court case, he went home, he continued his practice, and a little bit of time later, I think they arrested him for a parking ticket and they took him to jail where he died. He
Yeah.
died in jail. And
They
this
killed him.
gets more
Mhm.
interesting. They say he died in jail because of malnutrition.
Oh my
Oh
You
man.
can't
god.
make this shit up. So a rapper named Nipsey Hussle made a documentary about Dr. Sebi.
No
It was
shit.
getting ready to go to Netflix. It was going to be the next Blackfish, is
Yeah,
what they
yeah,
said.
yeah.
He was working on the documentary when outside of the studio he got shot by what they called gang crossfire, and the police came and they took all of his computers
Did
and
they
they
kill him?
confiscated it as evidence, and that documentary doesn't exist anymore.
Did they kill him?
He's dead too.
See, yeah,
So
I wasn't
Yeah.
being paranoid about the Men in Black. Yeah.
So, well, I mean, yeah, but and the important thing is here that this is not what I just told you is not a theory.
Right, right. It
Those are the
happened.
things
It
that
happened.
actually happened.
No, I totally yeah.
If you want to jump into the conspiracy theory, you can maybe articulate or speculate why they did it or when they,
Yeah.
But what I just told you is on
Wonder if
record.
Tupac was involved
It's
in that too, 'cause he was in
fact.
that whole circle with them.
I don't know, but he said
It's
maybe
ridiculous.
he mentioned Tupac. I don't know. I don't know anything about it, but
No,
that's to me is so wild and like
is well, you can get
yeah.
Dr. Sebi's Bible. It's called the Dr. Sebi Bible, and so it got published on Amazon. They took it down, and then
Right.
so many other independent people republished it that
Oh
they had to
wow.
give up.
Yeah.
Wow, I want to get that book.
It's yeah,
Because I've done a lot of stuff like naturally for myself that worked so well that
right,
it's just like you can't dispute it. And what's funny about you saying about like gas station food, that's what we were living off of on tour.
right,
Whenever we didn't get our hotels and stuff, we were getting on the gas stations, and it's like I think that also like contributed to what happened to me because I was getting sick off of all that stuff and like the amounts of
right,
bad I mean, because even though I was a vegetarian at that time, I was still eating, like, a lot of crap, and it wasn't
right.
like so, um,
And
it
well, you seem to be very high energy and
yeah.
very inspired on a regular basis
Oh,
without
thank
any lulls.
no,
And
no.
you're mentioning that you're not drinking caffeine.
Nope, I
And
can't have it.
I can't help but just and this is the narrow-sightedness of me, the short-sightedness of me is I honestly have a hard time even picturing myself without caffeine.
Well, that's because it's a drug and you're addicted to it. So what I
Yeah,
tell people that are addicted to caffeine is just wean yourself off of it.
right,
And then, what I do, and I'm not saying what to do because I'm not a doctor, but I do about 15 to 20 minutes a day of sunshine on my stomach and my legs directly to get my vitamin D. Vitamin D is usually the thing that you need, and you go to caffeine for it, but really you just need
right,
vitamin D because that's going to help with your melatonin.
Caffeine is like Norton antivirus. They sell you the caffeine to
right.
fix the problem, but the fix actually creates the problem.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Right. Not to
So,
mention somebody saw me drinking Monster Energy drink in one of my videos,
oh,
and they told me they sent me this big long thing with an article attached, and I didn't believe this at first, and I had to look it up. But there's ingredients in Monster Energy drink that lower your
oh,
testosterone.
absolutely,
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
long
Taurine.
term, you're
Yeah.
gonna need it more.
So the stuff that they're putting into food not only messes with hormones, but it messes with um like your entire mental health system. Like
Yeah. Oh,
those
as
foods
it's
that
all
they're
connected.
absolutely, they're giving you food that can make you depressed and make you sick, like so sick, like just mentally. I mean, not just physically,
Yeah.
because we know food can make you sick physically. We've always known that,
Right.
but this stuff, and then there was the sugar issue. So I used to be like a sugarholic back in the day. Like I used to be like the biggest sugar fiend ever. I haven't had
Yeah.
sugar in 4 years. So yeah,
Really?
I cut it out. I had to get rid of it, and
I don't even know how to go about avoiding sugar.
I
Like,
cook all my own food. So I have a
We
little bit
cook
of I have
everything.
a pain in the ass lifestyle that's not for everybody, but
right.
everything that goes in my mouth, I prepare myself. I don't eat
Mhm.
processed foods. So if I don't make it, I don't eat it, which is another part of the reason why I kind of hold up because it's harder for me to go out now and function out there because I have to basically the next time we would go on a tour, I have to bring a chef because there's no way I could or I'd have to
Yeah.
be given a kitchen to cook my food or something. Like there's no way
Right.
that I
Right.
could like, and
There's
so it's
I
hard.
think
It's hard.
there's a lot more restaurants popping up nowadays that embrace that holistic. Now trust issues come into play here.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
I live in St. Peters, Missouri, and I can't I and moving here, I was so incredibly uh impressed by how when you go out to eat, there's like vegan restaurants and holistic I'm using the wrong word when I say holistic restaurants, but health food places where you can sit down and eat like an eggplant dish
Yeah.
that is just fucking delicious.
Oh yeah.
And it's like a cooked you're not eating a handful of green leaves.
Which
You're
I do
eating
sometimes. I do that.
You
well,
have
yeah,
to have
I
there's
greens
do
nothing
that.
wrong with
in
that,
the
but that's
But
diet.
why
I
I
also
people
make
shy away
I
from it.
make I'll make you a lasagna from plants and it'll taste like a lasagna. I'm not talking
Right,
about a fucking I'm not talking
We
about a lettuce lasagna. I mean like
right.
I will give you gluten-free noodles, but everything I cook, I make it like the stuff that I was comforted by in my old diet so that I don't feel like
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah,
missing out
there's
on
so much
everything.
substitution now that you don't have
Yeah,
to miss out.
you don't have to.
Right.
But I do
Well, for
still
me,
like,
I don't necessarily crave meat or want sugar or anything like that. And I don't need a patty to taste like meat. I don't
right,
need a salad to taste like or anything like lasagna. The food, I went to this place and I ate the food. It was like an eggplant filled with rice, and then it had
right.
plants, and it was kind of buttery or whatever. There was a sauce involved. It didn't taste like anything. It didn't try to imitate meat. It was just fucking good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
And I'm like,
there's stuff like that, and it's
we
really
need
awesome.
more
Yeah,
of those, you know.
Mhm.
Hopefully, if the time comes that you guys do decide to go on tour, this will be a more prominent thing. But
yeah.
I've lived in Peter's for about 8 months now, and just in the time that I've lived here, I've seen two holistic restaurants open that
That's
are
good.
Oh,
doing
Yeah.
that's
great.
awesome. Yeah, I think that that's starting to become because people are starting to get sick, and I think people
Right.
are starting to
The
realize
sick
like
of
the
it.
allergen stuff, all the stuff that's happening. The wheat supply has been completely contaminated,
Everything has been
and
contaminated.
and
Nothing's growing in our own
no,
territory
not
anymore.
only are things not being grown here, but things that are being grown in places where they tell us that those are our enemies. Well, then why the hell are you buying our stuff from them?
Yeah.
I just found out that like 90% of strawberries come from China.
But that's
And I
why, like,
didn't understand that because we can grow it. I grow strawberries in my backyard. Why are we not growing it here? because what's happening is we are growing things here, but we're exporting it, and
because it
then
makes more
they're
money.
taxing it. So
Yeah.
they make so much more money by not selling it to us, but by selling it elsewhere. And then they have cheaper places to bring it into us. So we're like the cattle that get the the
Yeah.
sawdust and stuff. Like they're not giving us the great stuff. So you got to kind of find a way to make your own garden. We're in the city, even though we're out in the desert, we're in the city. I found a way to make a garden. It's like gardening on fucking Mars out here. If I can do that,
If
y'all
Matt
can do
Damon
it.
can do it, you can do it
Y'all
too.
can do
Yeah.
it anywhere, because I can't believe I figured it out, because at first I was like, what the hell? It is like 120 degrees in the summer. Everything
Right.
dies. It's crazy. I figured it out. I've got a whole entire, like, I can eat. I would basically, if it was the end of the world, the zombie apocalypse, we would be able to eat and be fine, because
Yep.
I've got it going like that
That's
with the garden.
awesome.
And so that is something that is really important when you realize that, not only is the food coming from really far away, and then by the time you get it, it's going to be rotten anyway because it doesn't stay for
Right.
more than a day or two, but it's
Right.
also coming from a place that's potentially doesn't have your best interests at heart.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So perhaps at that point, maybe it's a good idea to start looking into, if you can't grow your own, finding farmers markets that prove that the person that brought it there didn't just buy it from the grocery store.
Right.
They're making their own thing. And that's really important, I think, because if people are really interested in ascending and being in part of that collective consciousness of, leaving the third dimensional heavy space and floating higher, you have to treat your body. This is your car. How do you get
Right.
an oil change? Do you get your car oil change? Do you get your tire service? Do you get a
Right.
tune up? If you're going to put that effort into your car, you should be putting that effort into your body.
Right.
And that's really important. And I
And
can't
you
stress it
have the
enough.
option. If you went to the gas pump and there's two pumps, and they were like, this is good gas and this one is shitty gas, you get to pick which one you want.
What are you doing?
It's
Yeah.
very clear, and it makes me feel like why it is clearly I can get plants and I can eat plants and I can eat better food than gas station food. And it's like, so I'm literally going to that gas pump that says shitty gas here. It's a nickel cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I doing? And then I'm reminded of these animals that well, you remember the Chinese guy, I forgot his fucking name, the doctor, he's a scientist, and he put the word love on water, and then he froze it,
Oh
and then he put
yeah, and he tested like the different the when
yeah,
he
and then yeah,
right
it
he
froze.
looked at the freezing fractals of like
Yeah,
snowflakes inside the water, and he was looking at like the emotions attached. I remember
right.
that. Yeah,
So what do we think is happening to our food when they torture a cow in
absolutely.
order to make? Because whenever, and a lot of people might not know this, but when you get a gallon of milk, not the organic, there is good milk. I
Yeah,
think I might
I
be
don't know.
full.
I don't drink dairy, so
Right.
I don't know
But
anything about
when you
it.
get
But
a gallon of milk and you do the math, there's more milk than there is cows to produce it. So
right,
you have
right,
to do a little, and then you dig a little bit deeper and you find out, and I feel this might be uncomfortable to hear, but when a cow is in a lot of stress, they produce more milk
right,
so that they can feed their offspring,
right,
so they
Mm-hmm.
can
right.
survive. So they torture cows in
They
order
do,
Yeah.
to
they do,
make
and
them.
you're
And
absorbing
that
all that.
torture, yeah,
So you're
goes into your
basically you're
psyche.
drinking torture milk, and
You're drinking
and
torture milk.
so I've been a vegetarian my entire life. I became vegan about almost 5.5, 6 years ago, but I was a
Right,
vegetarian for the first part. And when
right,
I was a kid, my parents didn't understand why I wouldn't eat any of the meat, and I didn't understand it either. And I
right.
just wouldn't eat it. I would spit it out. At one point, I
Survive.
choked on it. It was this whole problem, and my parents, they would lie to me about where it came from, and I started to figure it out. And so they
Yeah,
finally said, "You don't have to eat it." And my mother
right,
specifically said, she's just going through a phase. When she's older, she'll figure it out.
right.
It never
Well,
it
they
never was
thought they were doing the right thing.
they did, but they didn't understand that something inside of me didn't want to eat an animal, and everyone has to choose their own way, but that's what I chose from a very young age. And I always looked at it as absorbing the energy of the being, and
Yeah,
what do you want to absorb? It's like, A, you get what you pay for, you want to get the good gas, and B, are
right,
you going to get the one that makes your car pissed off and drive you into a wall? Or are you going to get the one that gives you like peace and harmony? And it's like,
right.
that's the way I've kind of lived my life with a lot of things. Um, One of the hardest things for me, I was a huge fan of horror movies like my whole life. And when I went through my awakening, I couldn't watch a horror movie. It was so weird.
Really?
Yeah, like, I couldn't watch it because it was like I felt like I was absorbing, like, this is the they, you know? This is the anchor in me that's dragging me back down to the 3rd dimension. It's trying to make me obsessed with
I
this,
see.
you know? So I
Right.
stopped doing it, but then I found a way to balance it. So I'll still check them out once in a while as long as they're not exploitive based movies. So if
Right.
they're just fun horror, like, you know, something silly horror, I'll check that out, but I won't watch
Right.
anything that's incredibly negative. I stopped doing it. I don't read the news. I don't pay attention to
Right.
anything that's going to put me on a vibrational level
Right.
within my power. You know, sometimes you get exposed to things and you just got to figure
Oh,
that out.
yeah. I went through a phase where like advertisements would make me sick, and I mean nauseous.
Hmm.
And I didn't kind of realize it at the time that I realize now that advertisement is actually lying. It's just glorified lying. It's legal lying, is what it is. They're lying as much as they
It's
can possibly get
It's
manipulation.
away with.
manipulation. Yeah.
And it used to catch me off guard because uh, working in construction, they play like a radio station where the guys are talking and they're having a conversation like a podcast,
Hmm.
and then they would be talking about a new bed that he got, and then I would start to feel nauseous, and then before I knew it, sure enough, it twisted. He was like, and you can get these beds, by the way, down there at the, and
Yeah.
I was like, fuck. I was like, they were selling something, and I could feel that vibe, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
with the horror movie thing, I definitely agree that if something is done well, especially like an existential horror, so to
Right.
speak,
Right.
as opposed to like a Chainsaw Massacre
Right.
movie, which
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
nonsense,
Like
basically.
something like that movie Hostel, I can't. I
Right,
could barely handle it even before. I will not watch
Mhm.
something like that. I will not
right,
watch people like harming each other on purpose just for the gratification of like that kind of a thing. But Killer Clowns from Outer Space, like I don't even know
right.
if that's considered horror, but I like that kind of stuff, so that's
Yeah,
cool. And
and
Silent Hill, I think,
Gremlins.
and
Right.
Silent Hill is a really cool fucking movie. So
Mhm.
Have you seen As Above, So Below?
no, I haven't seen it yet.
So
We're
I
about to check that out.
Yeah,
it
I haven't seen it.
it's a psychological thriller, and
Okay.
I don't wanna spoil the movie, but it's about the alchemical process of
Oh, wow.
facing your own demons, and it's allegoried by them going into the, catacombs underneath Paris. The catacombs, of course, being a parable of your own shadow
Right,
element,
Mhm.
right, right.
and so I won't say any more than that, but it is a very grotesque and
I'm
bloody
gonna check it
movie,
out.
but what each part of it represents is it's like Carl Jung's Red Book. If you were to turn Red Book into a movie, it'd be very sim in fact, I kinda think that they might have.
They may have like gleaned a little off. I
Mhm.
Well,
mean, that's what
yeah,
happens with like creativity. Sometimes stuff gets influenced, and
and that's
whether you do it
okay.
on purpose or not,
They
yeah,
did a good
I would
job.
have to
That's
check
all
that
that.
out. I've never seen that, but I think that a lot of movies have so much more than what's at face value,
Oh, yeah.
and you can go in and find stuff like that. Um, And that's one of the things I really liked about Silent Hill because it had a really cool multi-dimensional thing that no one at the time was
Mhm.
even talking about. And I don't know, everyone has a different opinion on what happened. I think that they all died in the beginning
Yeah.
and that was just
Oh,
done
it's
in
one of those. I see. I haven't
yeah,
seen
that's
it.
what I think.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, check that
I
out.
don't
It's
wanna
awesome.
give it away.
No,
Yeah.
I don't really mind spoilers
I
because I
don't
can
know if that's a
enjoy.
spoiler though. I don't know if that's really what happened. I'm saying that's my
Right.
interpretation. I
No,
don't know
no,
if
I
that's really
like
what
that
happened.
kind of movie that leaves it open to interpretation, the same as your lyrics do, or the
Yeah.
same as, any great piece of art does, leaves it opening to
And it's like
interpretation.
a horror movie, but it's not that scary. It's more of a creepy, eerie kind of
It's more of a
feel.
thriller.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very
Right.
creepy, but it's really cool. It's
That's
too
my
bad it's set in
favorite kind.
super
I
It's a
think we could just.
psychological.
Right. Yeah, psychological thriller. Something that reminds you of yourself
Mhm.
that you
Right.
deny. That's the scariest you can get. You can throw blood and guts and intestines all you want. It really doesn't. I don't care. But if you make me realize something about myself that I've been denying for
Exactly.
years, oh fuck. And
Yes,
that's
yes.
kind of what as above, so below kind of does.
And
Uh
that's where I moved, like, with that after, like, awakening, like, that's where I moved, like, I can still keep the balance of being able to do the dark and light, but,
right,
I'm not watching all movies about butterflies, but
right, right.
but
Well, you
but
got
it's
yeah.
still yeah, I balanced it, but I balanced it in a way where I cut off the stuff that was maybe not good for me to see, that was keeping me kind of anchored in that third dimensional headspace and letting myself balance between the two. And I think Silent Hill is a good, and zombie movies are fun. I'm
Hmm.
sorry, I love zombie
If
movies.
it's fun, it's fun. It's
Right, like
okay to go on a
Zombieland.
roller coaster. You ever see that meme of the monks, the Tibetan monks on a roller coaster?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So this person saying Hellraiser has so many layers. So my entire arm is tattooed from the movie Hellraiser. You can see like the
Really?
Chatterer. I have the female. It's not finished. I've got the Wire Twins and there's Pinhead and I got
Yeah.
demons to some, angels to others. There's that little guy. This is a
Yeah.
whole Hellraiser, but this was done like way before anything that I experienced. And so you know um, and I became friends with Clive Barker a long time ago on Twitter and stuff. So it was like cool. And then I went back and then like because I was like, oh man, here I am. I'm becoming an awakened person. I'm walking around with Hellraiser on my arm. What am I gonna do? I started to think about shit like that. And going back to the balance between the shadow and the dark. And I started to apply a lot of the Hellraiser stuff to the spirituality. And it actually ended up that they're not demons. I figured it out. They're not demons.
Do
They're
tell.
they're extraterrestrial travelers. They're like interdimensional. They come from their idea of pain is pleasure because they come from a dimension where it's opposite. So
Okay.
they're not trying to harm anyone.
I
They
see.
think that you're taking the box because this is the cube. We're back to the cube again.
Right.
You're playing with dimensions and you want to
Right.
get into their
Well,
world.
they think they're doing you a favor.
Right, because you
Right.
want
We
to
have
come and
such
play into their
sights to
world.
show you.
But
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But and the suffering will be legendary. And the thing is that, or pain, and it's like humans are going, oh, it's abhorrent, but then
Right.
but they're going, well, what's wrong? Didn't you want us? Didn't you call for us? Did you
Right.
opened the box? You asked for this. Like we're
Right.
here. You called us from another dimension.
Yeah.
And you wanted to do this. You played the game.
And
So
that's
now
what
we
we
have to do
do.
it.
That's what we do with
Yeah.
our. That's what I do with gas station food, and that's
Right.
what people do with alcohol.
You're
And
playing
then
the
Yeah.
fucking game. You're
they
playing the
open
game.
the
You open the
cube, they
box.
open the can, they open the bottle, they open the fucking wrapper off the candy bar.
Right. And there's a
Hmm.
reason why it's called Pandora's box. You're opening the box. But
Ah,
we just
that
said it
as
at the
soon as
same
you
Yeah.
said
time.
that. Ah.
And that's funny. I can't see the agnostic
No,
something.
sis. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So yeah, it is, and it's like you're opening so that happens so many ways in this experience. So I came back to like actually saying, you know what, I love this, and I'm going to continue to work on it because I think that it's actually a beautiful thing. It's not a scary thing if you look at it as like face value, and I just think that, it's really important to know that that part of me, that wanted to do this at one point is still
Yeah.
it's still a valuable part, even though it came from
You
the
have
shadow side.
the Tao Te Ching at home, and one of my
Yeah,
favorite lines from Lao Tzu is the mountain is high because the valley is low.
that's beautiful.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I mean, it sums up everything.
Everything,
Yeah.
everything. Yeah. Yeah. And so I started to realize like, I can love the parts of myself that are um dark
Right.
and be awakened at the same time. And it's
Right.
okay. And I can also go into the light and that's okay too. So for the
Right.
people that like really love the heavy metal part of me where I scream like a demon, well,
Right.
sometimes I'm gonna sing soft and I'm gonna be light, and then sometimes I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna dip back and forth. And
Right.
I think you can hear that in our music, and it's
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
You can't be enlightened without the third dimension because you have nothing to compare it
well,
to.
what did they say
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
movie Legend? What did he say? Darkness. What is light without
Yeah.
darkness?
What is
It's
light
nothing.
without darkness?
It's
Right.
nothing. It's
It's
It
nothing.
nothing.
reminds
Yeah.
me of in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Whenever he leaves man, he's concerned about his own wisdom. He's like, "Don't twist my shit up." But I'm about to leave, and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna leave back to heaven?" He's like, "No, I'm going back into the darkness.
Yeah,
That's where I
Hmm.
learn."
that's what you
And then
learn
he's like, "I'll be back as Hermes or some shit, but first I'm going to dwell for 1,000 years in the darkest
in the
portion of the
darkest.
halls of
Yeah,
Amenti,
Yeah.
because
yeah.
that's where my learning takes place." And you're like, "Damn!" And it goes to show you that. So Thoth is the most allegedly
He's
ascended
my homeboy.
master that we have ever encountered. Yet even he requires darkness and the night to be able to evolve his own soul, you
Yeah.
Well,
know?
I always thought that he was also Jesus, Buddha, Krishna. He's been here through all these, different
An
avatar
archetype. Right.
avatars. He's an avatar, And even Jesus had darkness. I mean, they nailed him to a cross and he fucking starved to death and bled to death. Like,
Right.
there's always darkness with each one of these avatars.
Right.
And just becoming Jesus and having to be on earth at that time and go through all the things that Jesus went through is very dark. Who would choose to do that, you know? So
It's interesting because like Buddha, before he came to enlightenment, he had to not only see tremendous suffering to shake up his whole world, but while he was sitting under the Bodhi tree, seven Nagas, a
yeah,
seven-headed Nagas, are basically what we call reptilian anthropomorphs, the most heinous creatures that we have in our mythology, which has become conspiracy now, but
that's actually
that's the
my
point.
name backwards. I figured out, by the way.
Who?
That's my name backwards.
What is
Nag-
it?
Nagas.
Nagas. Oh, okay, Sagan. That's
That's
right.
the
Okay,
birth
yeah.
of my. I found that out recently, and I was like,
Oh, that's
"Whoa!"
what that was an accident,
I
right?
didn't know that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's perfect. But even he had to be. It was an umbrella of heinous, sickening, dark
yeah,
creatures to be able to become to enlightenment. And in a way, the parable goes that the Nagas was protecting him during
uh,
his enlightenment. So, as much as we
okay.
need darkness for there to be light, well, so does darkness need the light in
Right,
order to exist as well. And
right.
Mhm.
And also not defying it because we know that resistance breeds persistence. And when Mara comes to Buddha with all the different desires, because we as a human race are obsessed with desire. I'll go through
yeah,
those YouTubes, you know, before I found your channel and stuff, and I'll see get your greatest desire, learn about manifesting your
yeah,
desire,
they're missing
manifest
the
your
point.
desire. And I'm going, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not where you need to go.
Right,
And Buddha was like being bombarded with this desire from being a prince. I think it's all like allegory, but it's the, you know, this is the stuff that he had to face. And Mara, and there's this idea in some like spiritual circles of calling serving Mara tea. You serve it tea. You sit down with that self, that dark self, and you sit down with that shadow part of you and you
right,
serve it tea. And you say, "You're my friend." And it reminds me so much of like having a passenger, and that's how I feel about the anxiety that I experience. I've talked to him about that.
Mhm.
I have a really bad anxiety issue. I've been grappling with this a very long time. And the one thing that really helped me with it is to stop trying to A, cure it, because that's never going to happen,
right,
accept that
right.
it's there, and B, not just acceptance, but befriend it. I
Yeah,
don't need to fight this thing. I need to work with it. And
right,
so, how do you do that? You know, you serve it tea. It's just like
right.
with Mara, you're serving
Yeah,
it tea. You sit
Mhm.
it,
down, we're gonna fucking talk about this shit, and we're gonna drink some fucking tea. We're gonna read the Tao. We're gonna do it.
right,
We're gonna do whatever we gotta do, but we're gonna get this worked out. But you're not going anywhere because you can't go anywhere. You're part of it.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
whenever you deny something, whenever you suppress something, it comes up in unexpected ways. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever
Mhm.
you express it openly in a manageable way, it doesn't surprise you later. And I'm glad you talked about the Mara because the first time I read about the Mara was in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and what they expressed, I think, upwards of 27 times in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they pressed this issue. They said, when you ascend into the bardo, you leave your body, you're going to come into temptation and fury of the Maras. But in order to defeat them, you have to not defeat them.
Yep.
Basically, you have to recognize them as reflections of
Yeah.
yourself.
It is. It's your
Mhm.
reflection. So
That's key.
one of the reasons why we get mad at each other and we hate each other, I don't mean you and me, but I mean people in general.
Yeah, I guess.
One of the reasons why we get angry about something is because it's a part of us that we know that
Yeah.
pisses us off about ourselves. So like I'm not saying I want to say I don't want to get into murder and all that because then that's gonna to some people sound like a little out there because it's hard to swallow this until you can really wrap your head around it. But let's
Right.
just say, you know, like um, I don't know, let's just
Well,
say
the best detectives cannot solve a serial killer until
right.
they get into the mind of
Exactly,
a serial
exactly.
killer.
So let's say like, you know, you absolutely hate people who, you know, kill people by throwing them off the side of a boat. It's just you're the worst thing you hate. And you get
Right.
so mad about it when you and I hate that
It's a
person.
very specific thing to
Yeah,
hate.
yeah, very specific. So I'm trying not to go somewhere that maybe somewhere goes and they're gonna feel like, oh no.
Right.
I don't know, someone's gonna come along and be like, fuck, she figured it out.
Ah.
Um, but you know, and so, well, what is that? Well, that might go back to, and Jung had some of this with like with the child part of you, like, and even in Freud, it was like maybe you were exposed to something that had to do with a boat and had to do with, and so now
Right.
that part of you is in there, and you're it's so subconscious that you're not even feeling it and realizing it, and you're projecting. So
Right.
now that makes you so mad that um you're basically gonna go off on this thing about, you know, you're gonna go online, you're gonna type, dude, they
Right.
should fucking burn, fuck them. And
Yeah.
now they're the enemy. But why do
Right.
you hate them so much? It's because they remind you, but you don't know that they remind you of you.
Right.
So all that anger that you have and all the jealousy, anything that you feel that's very negative is coming from a subconscious feeling of your own part of yourself.
Right. Right.
And it's hard to say that because who wants to admit that they
That's
have fucking problems, you
right.
know, deep issues, you know?
That's what's frightening about Jung. And a lot of people read Jung and say that they don't understand it. And I sometimes wonder if maybe they don't understand. I wonder
They don't
if
want
they're
to
actually
understand
blocking themselves
They're
from
blocking it. They're
understanding it.
blocking
because it
it.
reminds
Yeah.
them of
It's
themselves.
scary because
Right.
I read some stuff about me. Like, I think it was the ego stuff that got to me. It was like not realizing how much of a narcissist I was. And I
Right.
think we all have a narcissistic tendency because we're human.
Right.
But how much like I was playing into that role before and I didn't even know it. And
Right.
if you
Right.
had come to me and told me like 7 years ago, Sagan, you're a fucking narcissist. Like you're so stuck in your ego. I'd be like, fuck you. No, I'm not. Like you are, you know?
Right.
That's what you do.
Which is
And
a narcissistic response in the first
exactly,
place.
exactly. And then now though, if you said like, hey, you know, you used to, and I go, yeah, you're right. Like I was a fucking asshole.
Right.
Like I was
Well,
a real selfish piece of shit. Holy crap. How did you put up
right.
with me? You know? And it's like that's really hard as a human being to get to that part of
Right.
yourself where you can say something like that because it's so against what we're programmed.
Exactly. And
So again,
this is for the same reason that I'm so glad I didn't become a YouTuber when I was a teenager.
oh, I know. Oh my God.
Because like, well, for example, I read a little rumor about myself that I might be gay, and I read that on the internet. And they assume I'm gay just because I love Ram Dass and I have sexual intercourse with other gay men. But which isn't fair. But all right, sorry. But back in my teenage years, as I read that, I'd been mad because, you know, people, I don't know, whatever age, whatever, whenever you're in high school, being gay was like, it was fucking gay.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
evolving and loving Ram Dass and having lots of gay friends, I had two gay roommates whenever I was about
You had a gay
20 to
roommate.
Yeah.
right. I mean, not found out. I knew all along that there was nothing wrong with being gay. I knew that, but there was a stigma to it. However, now being 38 years old, when I read a rumor about myself being gay, I roll with it, and I let that unfold on its own because that's controversy,
Yeah,
and that's part of that shadow element to where if you're mad about that, well, you might be a little gay,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
reminds me of like the preachers who get caught with male
Oh
Oh yeah, all the
prostitutes,
or
time.
even the
and right,
politicians
all the time, dude.
that like rail against gay people, and then you find out that they're gay, and you go, "Oh, that's what it was about."
Right.
And we've had some of that in the music industry. I had some people. I don't know if you saw the hater bait video. I'm wearing a shirt that says "My bass player is a robot."
I heard the
Um,
song. I didn't see the video, but
okay, well, in that video, I wore that. It was a fuck you video before I had my awakening, and I still think it's
yeah,
funny. And
still, it's fucking
because it was, you
classic.
know, getting into metal as a female was really hard because there's a lot of big burly guys in there that don't think that I deserve to be there. And they would say things about me being too glamorous, the Lady Gaga of metal, all kinds of shit that I had to hear. And a lot of it was really just people pissed off that I was getting things, and then I had to hear the story about, well, she must be sucking someone's dick to get there, or who is she? You know, it was all that kind of crap, and I couldn't
How
understand
about
anything.
listening to the fucking music and the vocals and the lyrics and the fucking magic and saying,
Well,
"Oh, that's how she got here."
Well, the ego doesn't allow that
No,
sometimes. So,
right.
and then I had to think about that later on, and I was like, oh, I know what it was. So those big burly bass players were sucking dick, thinking they were going to get to the top in Hollywood. and they feel bad about it. So now they're mad at me because they think I did, So I figured, yeah,
Right.
I know what you did. I
Right.
won't tell anybody,
Right.
And it's just like, okay, well, here's the
It's
deal. You
it's one
never
of
had
those
a
things
like
like Leonardo DiCaprio is a very handsome man. And by the
that.
way, the reason I say that is because I'm gay.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
so
nice.
but no,
You're really gay.
a lot of people assumed that he was climbing the ladder in Hollywood because he was so beautiful. And
No.
then it's like, no, motherfucker, stop and pay attention for a second. Okay, he might be a piece of shit person. I don't know him personally. I don't know, but he's an incredible actor. His
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
acting skills are off the fucking charts. He can
yeah.
transform
He's good
into
at
other
acting.
motherfuckers.
Yeah.
So he no, that's one of those things where it's like it's got to be aggravating for people who a woman getting into metal or a beautiful man getting into acting or there a various amount of other components where people are going to say, "Oh, you got here because of this," and
Right.
they're not paying attention to the fact that this motherfucker worked his ass off.
Yeah,
Well,
they
like
don't
I
they don't see the whole rigmarole before. They just see the
yeah.
tip of
Yeah,
the top of the
They
the
just
mountain.
like there's
results.
an iceberg.
Yeah.
And what were we saying before about oh, about, I think I was telling you earlier, like how people had asked me about doing a meditation channel on YouTube or talking about
Right,
my life, talking about what we're talking about, my life experiences. And I was kind of, part of me was kind of lazy. I'm not going to lie. Like I get lazy. I got a lot of shit going on. So I don't always have
right.
time.
That's
And then the
balance
other,
too.
yeah. And then the other thing was I was kind of a little frightened by the idea because I thought, well, what if I do that, but then it all becomes about like what I looked like? Because there was this idea that,
Right,
oh, you used your looks or you used your boobs to get to like
right,
somewhere, and I'm not even at the top of music. I'm just somewhere in there, but I have a little bit of, more than I guess the average band. And so it's like, like, yeah, oh, well, she must get that because I guess A, she sucked dick, or B, because, I don't know, whatever, boobs. It always goes back
right.
to boobs,
It's
and
a
it's
yeah,
like,
whatever boobs. You should get
yeah,
a T-shirt
boobs.
that says "Yeah,
And we love
whatever
boobs. We
boobs."
love boobs, but it's just like, I kind of was hesitant. And I think I was telling you earlier about that. I was like hesitant. I don't want my channel to become
Right,
the focus is
right,
on what I look like. And if I did it, I might even just do a voiceover. Like I don't know that like I would, because I kind of feel like it would maybe take away from the message, and the message isn't about me.
right,
I'm I'm just the vehicle driving the
right.
conduit.
Well,
The
that
message is coming from somewhere else.
with that being with the music thing and with you being beautiful and at the same
Oh,
time being extraordinarily talented and creative, what the fuck is wrong with celebrating all three? Why do
yeah.
people got to be like, oh, it's this,
So
or
that's
no,
really
it's
hard.
that?
That's
Why
really
not
hard.
be like, oh, this is an incredibly talented singer and she's beautiful. What a fucking ticket. This is entertainment. this
It's
is
hard.
this is good material. We got the
Yeah.
whole package here. Celebrate the whole damn thing because the whole thing works. It's a
Right.
trifecta of fucking awesomeness. But instead they
So
got to pick it apart.
this is a me problem. This is not a them problem, though. I think a lot of that is in my own head. It's like me being afraid, like you said, why can't I have all those things? Because it feels to me like I'm going back to being like, am I in my ego? Am I being a narcissist? Am I being a fucking asshole? If I use the assets that I've been given, you know, to do something like that, um, I'm I think it's more about me worrying about what are they going to say? I'm only
Right.
here because of these things.
Like you told me with the spinning thing at the beginning of this before we went online here, and you kind of told, and by the way, obviously you were fucking spot on with that. Oh, all right, guys, before this video started, we were having technical difficulties because the shit wasn't loading, and I kind of started freaking out a little bit. And then she chimed in and she was like, listen, I know you know this, but a reminder, the more you stress out about that thing, the worse it's going to get. And I immediately was like, "Yep, okay." And so I got my kitty cat. And I was like, "Come here, kitty." And I pet the kitty cat. I went to go solve the problem. Quit worrying about it. No, we could just start over. Got back on the same one, and it worked up fucking great. And
That's
this goes
how,
along with what you're saying is that we seem to project that.
yeah.
And so if
You
we're
know,
worried about
Joey, that it's so hard to apply so
right,
hard to apply your own advice to yourself.
oh, I
I could give
Yeah.
you the best world advice and get you on track thinking to myself that, but I couldn't get it myself. It's kind of
yeah,
like hard. So I have to learn. I have to find a way to get past that roadblock for myself to be okay with saying, "Hey, I'm going to start a YouTube channel just about this stuff that I experience,
Right.
and I don't have to care if somebody comes along and says, "Oh, boobs," or "Oh,
Right.
you're only here because you sucked someone's dick to get
Right.
there." You
Right.
know, I don't have to think about that, and that's my journey. I have to do the work on that. I think, I have to get past my fear of dealing with society because
Right.
I had a lot of anxiety that I still have to work through.
Right.
And actually doing this, it's funny you labeled it catharsis because that's actually what it is for me because I haven't done
I
a
had a
live
feeling.
stream in years and years. I haven't done a live stream and probably I did the last live podcast a year ago. I canceled all of the rest. I had kind of closed off myself to a lot of it. I had a severe anxiety because I was so afraid to talk to the world. Like
Right.
built built I built up like we built right like with Hale Sagan, did we like work so hard
Mhm.
and then
Right.
I couldn't face it.
Right.
I couldn't do it. So
Right.
that's something that I need to work on,
The
and
pressure and the attention
it's a lot to handle.
and then the striving for for perfection that comes with a little bit of success, that pressure is enormous because it makes you feel like if you slip up once you're going to lose the greatness that you once achieved, and that's
Yes,
completely false. It's just
yes.
it,
I know it's such a false. It's like anxiety is the biggest liar. It lies to you. It tells you the false stuff, and you believe it, and
right.
you let it continue to drag you down that path. And it's so hard to be successful in anything because you're worried about all that stuff. And it's like, you know, something I see a lot of these days compared to like before the platforms were blowing up and people were getting big on platforms. Everybody wants to be famous now. And
Seems to
one
be the case, right?
and one of the things I tell people, and I'm not giantly famous by any means, I just had a little bit of a bump in my life that is a little bit more than maybe the average person, but not like hugely. But
Right,
even
right.
with that little bump came a huge responsibility.
It's a good
And
comfortable spot, by the way.
yeah, it's cool. I'm cool where I'm at. I don't need anything else. I'm good.
Right.
And if this is the way it stays, I'm okay with that. And if
It's
not, whatever.
perfect. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
And
Because you're
and
gonna, if you were to remain that cool band that not many people know about but just got discovered, and I can show your guys' music to somebody new, and it's I'm not showing them Nickelback. Oh fuck. I'm showing them something that is new to them. Hipster is the wrong term here, but to know about a band that not everybody knows about is special, and
oh,
it's fun. It makes
we
it
haven't been
fun.
ruined yet.
Right. You haven't been ruined yet. Exactly.
And we already got that in the first part and we moved away from it, so there's no chance that'll happen again. So we've turned down a lot of opportunities. I've turned down so many opportunities and deals that some people would slap me for. And I right, like how many
He's
times
like, yeah,
things have come
yeah.
along and if I told you what they were, I'm not gonna call out anything, but there's deals that were offered that we didn't take, and if someone in a band would be like, "Are you out of your fucking mind?" Like, "Oh,
Right. Yeah.
and it's like I'm happy just being independent, and that doesn't mean that I wouldn't end up on a label someday if they gave me something where I could own my own rights, but maybe hell, they gave me publicity to get the
Right.
music out there. It might be something you think about, but right now, I'm just saying we're good where we are. We've
Right.
talked about it a lot of times.
Right.
But even with the little blip of tasting a little fame or getting people to know who you are, even with that, it comes with such a huge responsibility. And
Right.
I wasn't ready for it.
Right.
Um,
That's fantastic to recognize about
yeah,
that about yourself because you might have avoided catastrophe.
I think I did. I think it saved me. And that's why I got sick. And the universe put the brakes on it. They were like,
Right.
you're gonna be
Right.
fucking sick. And then I found that being sick was a gift. And not only was
Right.
being sick a gift, having being afflicted with so much anxiety and all this stuff was so beautiful because it led me to a place that I never even thought existed. And
Yes.
and it's just
Right.
so wonderful. It's so
Your
wonderful.
garden and your holistic diet and
Yeah,
the having your music being completely under your control,
right.
to have all these beautiful blessings in your life, you had to turn down particular glorious things in order to have that beauty that you had, that moderacy, that
Gotcha.
balance. And yeah, and I think that is self-control beyond what most people, including myself, can imagine. Because like uh it's one of those things where like my buddy Jason Barron, who's kind of a mentor of me, he wrote the forward to my book. uh he told me, he was like, you have to be careful because Netflix and Hulu and stuff, they have like talent scouts, but
Yeah.
they're not scouting for people, they're scouting for ideas, and they'll take Library of the Untold now that they
Hmm.
see it's working. Because he hit me up, he was like 40,000 subscribers in 8 months is actually unprecedented.
I
And at
never
this
heard of
point,
anything like that.
Yeah.
right, he's like, you have to be careful at this point. And at
Yeah.
this
True.
point,
Yeah.
and as he's telling me this, I'm like, dude, don't put any more pressure on me or anything like that, right? And I got to the point where I almost would kind of like to plateau just a little bit, because whenever we look at what happens to certain people who break after they get this enormous amount of pressure,
Yes.
and I would never get to the point of like Dane Cook or Britney Spears
Right,
or
right,
whatever, but
right.
we saw what happened to
It
them.
does happen. It does. It
Yeah,
happens
People
all the time.
people think that they want that massive fame, but
right,
when you get there, it's not always what you
Look,
anticipated.
we're
right,
not that famous, but there was a time when Nick and I were in the grocery store and I was in the women's aisle, pissed off because men make maxi pads and put wings on them. And I was mad and I'm like, who the hell just thought this was a good idea? Because
yeah,
this fucking sucks and I need a pad without wings. Now I was like, have my period, whatever, TMI.
right,
And the guy that was stocking the shelves looked down and said, hey guys, I really love your haircuts that you put out recently. And I looked up and I went, what the fuck are you saying to me right now? Who are you? And he was,
right,
oh, I'm a fan of your band. And I went, I gotta
right,
get the
right.
fuck out of here. So, and that was just like, I ran out of the store and I was like, I'm
Oh,
never
that
going
freaked
back.
you out?
I never went back ever again because I didn't realize that it was like the walls have eyes. Like what?
Yeah.
Holy! It was my first real invasion
Oh,
of privacy where I didn't realize that like I had to. Because like, is he gonna go online and tell everybody about my period now? And it wasn't. It was the
ah,
idea of
okay,
like. It was
right.
like the idea of like, what are the chances that the guy stocking the shelf over your head in the tampon aisle is gonna fucking know who you are? And is he gonna go and tell
That's
you?
freaky.
It was
See,
really,
now
especially because I live in a very
you
big city.
reacted to that very much differently than most people would. And now I realize that's a different
I
circumstance.
was nice to him. I was nice to him, by the way. I wasn't
No, yeah,
mean.
oh,
Like
of
I
course.
was like, "Oh, thank you. We appreciate it." Um, you know,
The the
you know,
only thing I've had was a guy at Taco Bell gave me a Baja Blast, and he said, "This is
Yeah.
a." I ordered a water. He gave me the water, but he gave me a Baja Blast. He's like, "Bro, I
I
love the channel,"
you shouldn't
and
be
Those
doing
are the
that, but
those are
that's
the
cool.
good parts.
Yeah, that's cool. And there's a lot of good. I'm not saying there isn't, but
no,
it's
that's
just
like the perfect amount of it, though. You
right. But
know?
there's people that they want to be like Madonna famous, and I don't think Madonna lives probably the best life.
No,
And
No.
you have to be happy in here. I've opened for Iron Maiden,
she's
and I've
played in
been
front of hundreds of
and
thousands
I
of people.
yeah,
Right.
and I'm happier now than when I was on stage with
Right.
150,000 people.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
So
that's
you have to know what you
moderacy.
want up here.
Yeah, because
Right.
it can get you really fast and it can tear you down really fast. And if you're not ready for it, like I wasn't ready for that.
Right.
And I don't know that I ever would have been. Like, I don't think that you are born and raised to be ready for something like that.
The axiom
You
that comes
know?
to mind is the bigger you are, the harder you fall.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
absolutely. And
Unless you know where to what height to fall from,
right,
Right.
right,
then it
right.
won't hurt so
If
bad.
you got that perfect
Yeah.
that trees know how to grow in such a way that they can manage their own height, and some
I
trees
think
get
a lot
very,
of
very
people
tall.
I think a
However,
lot I think
uh,
a lot of people that are very famous that don't end well, they let themselves get swept up too high,
Hmm.
and
yes,
they don't know when to stop.
right,
Well,
And
that was the thing about, so when we were talking about being on tour, this is a really weird thing about success. And don't fall into this trap because we did. And I did for sure. When you're starting to become successful, you don't absolutely always recognize that everything you're being given is a part of your success and that you're climbing in a way that you're always like, okay, well, that was good, but what's next?
yeah,
And it's never enough.
what's
And
next?
it
What's next?
becomes
What's
it
next?
becomes a drug. And what happens is, and that's actually
it becomes a
a
drug.
big part of what our
Yeah.
song Doors Will Open. Our song Doors Will Open's on that video game Breakfast. That one right there, um, that idea of being sucked into this world of Hollywood and music and whatever, and you're in the industry and it's never enough. And it's like, okay, so there's no way out. I'm done. Like this is it. I'm in this, and like here we go. Um, okay, so I made it on Revolver magazine. Okay, but what the fuck? I need to be on this
Right.
magazine. And then you're on
Right.
this magazine. Well, I got to get on this fucking tour. I need to be on this festival. I need to be
Right.
on this thing. And I I lost a couple years of my life that I don't even fucking know what the hell I did. And not recently, we were going through some memorabilia for our studio, and I'm like, we did that? I don't even
Mm-hmm.
remember. And I went,
Because you were
oh,
so lost in the game that you
I
weren't
got
in the
so
moment.
lost. Like I'm like, you
I
know,
I'm
there was
really
a point
glad that
where the singer Corey Taylor of Slipknot reached out to me, and we became friendly and stuff. Yeah, and it got mushed into all this stuff because I was on to the next fucking thing. Like, oh, that's
Mm-hmm.
cool, but like, what's next? And who else can I talk to? And it was just like it became this thing where I looked back and I'm like, holy shit, like I had a lot of success. I
right.
didn't know that I had success because at the time it was never enough for
It
me.
never feels like success when you're there either.
Right.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
Well, so
so I've learned to like peel that back a little bit, and you got
I
to make sure you keep that.
I got two things to ask you. How okay, first of all right, on the Corey, I have three things actually, because I'm glad that you said the thing that you said about what's next, because I'm catching myself doing that now. Whenever I put out the DMT St. Peter connection video, and it didn't explode the way that some of my prior videos had, and I was upset about it. And then I caught myself. I was like, "The fuck are you upset about?" Like,
Yeah.
well, there's no real like every single video I have has to go like way viral. But okay, so first of all, how do you even respond to someone like Corey Taylor reaching out? And
Okay.
my follow up question is, and this is gonna sound rude towards Corey Taylor, and I apologize to Slipknot fans, but this is a question for you. How, how do you feel about certain artists who are way less talented than you, like Corey Taylor, becoming massive
Okay.
household
We have to
names?
ask what Corey Taylor would
We have
think.
to ask what Corey Taylor would think because that's the new thing now. Now, I'm just kidding, but okay.
How
So,
did he have an opinion on anything? I
okay.
didn't.
So I'm going to tell you how it works. And Corey, you know that I love you and I would never talk poorly about anyone. Um, so I, okay. So when he first contacted me, I don't know if you noticed on Twitter, he'll change his handle a lot. He'll change like his main handle is whatever they make him have, but he would change it to like, you know, I'm Dorothy wearing ruby red slippers. He would do all this weird, silly shit, and I didn't know that because I didn't follow him. So I didn't when he wrote to me, I didn't know that Corey Taylor wrote to me.
Really?
I almost ignored it because I had thousands of messages at the time coming in, and
Right.
couldn't keep up with it. It was like right at the like when we were really hitting like the ground with stuff, and I almost ignored it. And that voice that actually back then I ignored, I didn't even know what the hell it was, said, "Open up that message," and I did, and I opened it up, and I went, "Holy fucking shit, this is Corey motherfucking Taylor," you know. And when he was in the other room, and I went, "Hey, look, Corey Taylor just wrote to me." He went, "Corey Taylor who?" I went, "Slipknot." And he went, "Oh, really?" Now he knows a lot of famous people, so for him it was just like, "Oh, that's nice." Um,
That would
you
have
know,
blown my fucking mind. I would
but
have.
it did, and I wrote back. I didn't really know what to say, and I always feel like when Dave Navarro hit me up, he was on what was the band Jane's Addiction. When Dave
He's in
Navarro
Red Hot Chili
when
Peppers
Dave
too.
Navarro hit me up, it was I just felt like I I get like remember that movie with Ricky Bobby, Talladega Nights, and he's like, I
Yeah.
don't know what to do with my hands. I felt like that, so
Yes.
I did
Right.
that. I think I did better with Corey than I did with, but anyway, I didn't know, what I didn't know what to say, and I don't really quite remember. I know
What
he
did
goes back
he
and look.
say?
He told me that he was a big fan of our music. He found us online, and he wanted us to know
Wow.
that he was a fan, and he wanted to know a little more about some stuff. And we chatted,
He
and
probably
we
wanted to know how to do vocals.
I don't. I'm not gonna say anything, but we ended up meeting up at we were at Ozfest
Sorry, by the way.
That's okay. We were at Ozfest, meets Not Fest, and we were volunteering with a veterans group because I really feel really strongly that veterans in America aren't treated really well. So
For
I
sure.
teamed up with a group to help spread the word about it's an organization that was helping veterans get like wheelchairs and stuff and get like services that the government like wasn't giving them. So
Right.
we went and we volunteered and we and like Jose Manga from Sirius Satellite Radio was there and we all went backstage and we were backstage and we got to meet a whole bunch of people in Corey. We finally got to meet up with Corey and he came up and gave us all high fives and hugs and we took photos and we all chatted and stuff and like I don't know, it was just a really nice, pleasant, thing that we got and I don't know. I don't really know how to say other than
I would have looked at my feet and continued shoegazing for the duration of the conversation. And I know, okay, Slipknot, I can see Slipknot fans right here. I'm losing subscribers as we speak. But don't get me wrong, I like Slipknot and I
yeah,
enjoy their music.
I do too.
What I
Yeah.
find to be disturbing is that they took a musician who is decent at his craft and made him a fucking god.
Okay, so
Like,
this is how it works. I'm not going to talk about Corey specifically, but in general, this is how the music industry works. I'm going to be very honest here. A lot of people aren't.
sure.
So when you're raised in this on this third dimensional plane, you're taught that you know this is the music that's out there. This is what gets big. You have to do a rags to riches story. You build your way up into the world. You find your way in. You get to the record label at Hollywood Capitol Records. You kick the fucking door in. You open up that door and you go, listen to my fucking demo. And they
Right.
go, well, listen to this. And they call their friends. And before you know, that's not what happens. Okay.
Right. No, it's not the
So
case.
this is what happens. I'm going to give it to you straight.
Okay.
Money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you want to be in a rock band and you want to get big, you got to have a lot of fucking money.
Right.
And that's pop music too. It's not just. I mean, literally the
Everything is show
band Motley
business.
Crue. So you can follow the paper trail on anything, not even just bands, but artists, actors, all of it. So basically, like Motley Crue, for instance, they just did that movie, The Dirt. That was
Okay.
only half true. It was mostly bullshit. And the reason why it was mostly bullshit is because one of the band members' brother-in-law was the vice president of Capitol Records when they got big. So
Okay.
there was,
Well, that was taken off
that
of
was
Nikki Sixx's book,
right.
which he admitted that he embellished
right,
a lot
but that's called nepotism, and
Yeah.
nepotism also, and that does that plays a role in everything in life. If your uncle owns a law firm and you go to law school, he's going to hire you.
Right.
That happens. But don't lead people to believe that you can roll up and knock on the door and get in because your good looks or because of how good you sing.
Right.
So
Right.
that's how you get musicians that aren't very good being higher up on a higher
Right.
level because they have more money. That's it.
100. That 100% makes sense, and I
So
can
here's
see
the
it
thing.
just about everywhere I look because
Yeah.
all of my favorite bands are not gigantic radio hit bands.
Mhm.
And it's like,
So,
why is
yeah,
everyone sleeping on these bands? I can't
they're
help but
not.
think there's a flaw in the system. The way you describe that 100% makes sense,
Slipknot did have one thing going though, is when they came out, nobody sounded like Slipknot.
Someone said Hail Sagan's better than Spirit Box. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
What you didn't know about Spirit Box, and I'm sure they're lovely people, is they're from Canada, and Canada has a wonderful program that the United States doesn't have. If they feel that an artist is like deserving of it, they have a fund. So Canada funds the artist to come to America and get famous. So they're being funded by the Canadian government. If I was being funded by the American government, I'd be opening for Madonna or opening for Slipknot,
Right.
opening for Metallica. Like I'm not
Right.
being funded by the government. I wish that we had that kind of funding. We don't.
Right.
So basically, we're where we're at based on how much money we have. So we invested a lot, and that's how this is where we got. And here's the thing. So if we want to be mentioned every week, like Corey Taylor gets mentioned, or if we want to be in these magazines and get it, we can do it. We can go out right now. We can be on the covers next week. Here's the issue: you got to pay.
Right.
And there's a revolving payment. So you drop a deposit down, kind of like when you have a retainer fee. And you
Right.
get the retainer fee, and you can do it.
And it's expensive.
You can do it through a publicist. You can do it through a publicist, or you can do it just directly. It's very much considered payola, but there's a workaround.
Right.
And you can right now be on the cover of any magazine, and you can be in their cycle for the next year if you give them enough of the money. The other thing is publicity is not what it used to be, where you would go in a hardcover magazine and that was for life. You get to have this thing. You can put it in a frame. You can show your friends. After the 6-month cycle's over, they delete it.
Yep.
So when you go back, all the stuff that you paid for to get in is gone.
What's the
So
fucking
now
point?
you have no news anymore. And you know what happens when you have no news? You
Right.
can't get verified. You can't
Right.
do it. I mean, it was a real pain in the ass to get verified on Sagan, on Instagram rather, before they were selling the verifies. I was verified on Twitter before they were selling them, and we were verified on Facebook and Instagram before they sold them. Before
Right.
they were selling those check marks, you had to be, it was called newsworthy. So
Right.
you had to go out and you had to get on the news, and we had to pay publicists to get someone to cover our story. And if you don't
Really?
pay, so basically every artist that's really famous is only there because someone either bankrolled them,
Right.
whether it be their inheritance or their
Right.
friends or label, um or because they paid the publicist or the whatever the system is. And then there's another half to it. So there's two more parts to it. There's the buy-on system. You're not going to open for a band that's really big unless you pay.
Right.
So
The pay
you
to play.
can't. Yeah, you can't. We never did that, but
There's a
that's why
few
we
lucky
never did
breaks here and
Yeah, we
there,
got some really good breaks,
but ultimately, if you want to stay in the game, you have to pay.
yeah. So
Right.
you have to
Right.
pay. So if you're opening for like the biggest band you can think of in metal, it's because you paid to get there.
Right.
And so those are the bands that are getting the press and the coverage.
You're hoping that touring with them pays off in
Right,
return.
yeah. Well,
Right.
because it's like really a lot of exposure. If you do a good job and people see that, they're gonna probably follow you and buy your album. And
Right.
then the other part of it too is, so you got the buy-ons, you got the buy-ons with the press, you got the buy-ons with all that stuff. And the system works that they don't work with independent bands.
Okay.
So if you're an independent band and you're not attached to either a specific agent or a specific attorney or a specific label, they will absolutely not touch you. You have
Really?
to be in their party. So it's like the popular kids in high school. You have to be in the popular. You have to be sitting at that table. If you don't sit at the table, they will not even fucking look at you. And
Fuck.
then if you're doing that, you have to be willing to give up all of your morals and all your shit and everything. So it's kind of like it becomes an issue of like, do you want to sell yourself out? It's really about selling out. And so
Yeah.
we
Which is
we
it's
we
become a
don't want to do that.
cliche term, but it quite
It's
literally
true.
is
It's
what
real.
it is.
So
And that
yeah,
it
so
seems to be the same deal with science. It's the
mhm,
same in
it
music as it is with
it is.
science.
It is. It's the peer reviewed system. It's flawed and it's purchased. If you
Yep.
Right.
can purchase your way into the peer review system, you can have your paper published and everyone will say that you're a genius. And
Right.
then you wonder why this little scientist over here, no one hears him because he doesn't have the money or the whatever to get in and do that. And so we've had to fight against that for a very long time. And
Right.
we almost fell into the trap and then we got ourselves out of it. And it's like,
Right. A wise
that's why
move.
we don't care anymore. We're at the point where like this is just fun for us, and whatever
Right.
happens happens, and we don't give a
And
shit
yeah.
what happens
And then
whatever.
whenever you turn that work into fun, that's where the most creativity, as you've clearly
Right.
displayed with your new album, that's where most of the creativity comes from when you turn that work into play, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
And
exactly.
that's a beautiful, that's like being in the pocket,
Yep,
Right.
so you can
that's it,
freely express yourself without any inhibitions.
It's called the
absolutely.
zone.
And
Right.
Yeah.
that's the point of being on Earth.
Yeah.
We're here to experience stuff and grow, but we're also here just to enjoy this whole thing.
Right.
And if you're not enjoying it, you're not doing the right thing. And so I just figured that out, in my life. Like music is so much fun for me, but it's not my purpose. And it's not
Right.
the thing that I need to be so hyper focused on that I need to start giving up my moral values to get
Right.
there,
This
because
is
who
this
cares
is
about there?
this is kind of what I want to clarify to a lot of people with the misconception about my Black Cube video, is that it seemed to have catapulted an entire conspiracy thing online about a soul recycler on the moon, and that we're sent to Earth to suffer to feed these reptilian beings, and it took on a life of its own. And it's like, and I'm trying to tell people that's not at all what I said in the video. I described that suffering is necessary. I
Yeah,
described that we have to break boundaries of our inheritance. I described that we are physical creatures living in with carbon atoms, and
yeah,
we are inhibited by our five senses, and we
yeah,
are on Earth. But the main goal was meant to say you can transmute all of that by making that work into play, by turning
right.
this suffering into fun. And you can
Absolutely.
turn suffering into fun. It's
You
not
can.
difficult as long as you look at it like a game. So
Right.
I'm not saying that anyone really miss the point of the video, and I wouldn't, because every like music, it's open to
Right,
interpretation,
it's
but it
interpretation.
wasn't meant to be pessimistic.
Well,
I
I
didn't
think it
say
comes back down to, like, blame too. It's like
right.
people need something to blame. They always need
Yes.
something to blame, and they had to blame the reptilians. So we have a song Inner Metal, which is really heavy, and
Right.
that's, like, the super dark part of us,
That was
and,
the
like,
first song I heard from you
it's
guys.
it's it's just like right in your fucking face. I start screaming, and it's just like, "Whoa!" And it's like, okay, the imagery in the video and the lyrical value of it is very based in an idea of a world, and it's not here. I wasn't talking about Earth. It's another dimension, and it's a place where, and I think it's more allegorical than anything. It wasn't meant to be taken
Yeah,
literally.
of
The
course.
idea is that there's an essence, a vibe of something that wants you to keep feeding into negative space. It's feeding off of that. You're feeding
Right.
it every time you do an eye for an eye, every time you do violence, every time you do anger. You're feeding that that essence, and the more you feed it, the more it brings like the bullshit back to you. And so it's a cycle of pain. So it's
Right.
yeah,
And
you
then
can
you
call
buy
it
more
reptilians.
products.
Yeah, we called it snakes. You can be whatever. It's reptilians. Whatever it is. It's you got to have something to explain it. So I think that stuff is just like like I said, more of like it's not meant to be considered literal. It's more of an idea
Right.
of a
Right.
reptilian society. It's easier to imagine that is
Right.
installing this stuff.
Some people
Yeah,
can't reach the depth of allegory, so they do take it literal.
yeah, yeah,
And even our ancient people talked about reptilian beings,
yeah.
shapeshifters, and it's a lot of fun. And every single culture on Earth has mythology of reptilians who live in the underworld, who
Mhm.
feast on human suffering, and they are shapeshifters. And if you and by having every culture saying that, a person might easily say, oh, then this must be objectively real. But when you think
Right.
about the way, when you break it down, that the underworld is down here in the amygdala, and the
Yes.
shape shifting means you can turn into corporations or a greedy
Right.
salesman or this and that, and the
Right.
feeding on the suffering of others sells products, you realize,
Right.
no, we are the reptilians.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Well, we have the R complex, which is the amygdala, the part of the brain that's the reptilian brain. It's where we
Right.
started in evolution. So, that's the mirror effect of blame again is we don't like what we see about ourselves, so we're blaming this other thing. And a big part of like the idea of something against you, it
Mhm.
makes life a little easier to explain for people that can't
Right.
see past the allegory,
Right.
and that is what this stuff preys on me. It preys on it because it pushes it through the media. It pushes it
Right.
through the 24-hour news cycle. It's
Right.
sucking them in. So whether
Mhm.
it's reptiles or not, who cares? Because the point is, at the end, is it's still sucking out this negative energy, and you're feeding it. So
Right.
stop feeding it. And that's one of the lyrics that we have is eye for an eye feeds the machine. You must resist and starve them
Right.
out. Like you
Right.
must resist, and that starts with like putting down the news, putting down
Right.
you
Well,
don't need
the
news
the
24/7.
news is almost clearly what seems to be what they found out. The CIA found out in the MK Ultra.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
mixed with Pavlov's dog. He would
Yes.
torture a dog. Well, he took
Conditioning.
a trained dog, tortured it until it forgot its training, and
Right.
then the training that it gave it after that torture could not be diminished. And I feel like
Right.
the news is a model of that experiment used on the
Absolutely.
masses. You know?
Mhm.
Absolutely. And whether that comes from a bunch of snakes dressed up in people's clothing or if
Right.
it's just some assholes at the top of a corporation, it doesn't
Right.
matter. We
It
don't
doesn't
need to know
matter.
why. It
Right.
just means that hello, stop fucking feeding it.
Right.
And this everyone's saying propaganda. And it's funny because I always
Right.
say we don't watch a lot of TV, but if we're watching something that has commercials, I'll say mute the propaganda, then mute
Right.
it. So I
Mute
don't
the
have them
propaganda.
I don't want them NK ulturing us, so we've been muted, because I like refuse to watch ads and stuff, and it's like, and maybe that makes me ignorant, but ignorance is bliss. I don't think I'm ignorant, but I'm on an as a need to
No.
know basis. If
I,
I
I
need to know, and then there's the part of me that goes, well, do I really need to know about? Let's say, okay, they did that thing recently where they put the alarm out on everyone's phone to let you know if there's going to be a nuclear war or some shit, and I turned it off. We didn't listen to it. And I
right.
didn't turn it off because I thought that some weird thing was gonna MK Ultra us. I did it because I
Right.
don't like alarms. I
Right.
have I have a system inside me that with stimuli, I get really like ultra like super like whoa if I hear something
Frankly,
loud.
it's rude to put that
Yeah,
out to
I don't like
everybody,
it.
but
I don't like it. You know, people are on the spectrum, they can't handle shit like that. Like that's
right,
not like I felt like it was like a brain rape, you know? It was kind of like, why are you forcing me to do something I'm not even I haven't even consented to this and you're like doing this. So we turned it off and you know, it's like that it was like the idea behind something like that, you know, that they
it,
can just kind of I'm
there's
like
a lot
I'm
of
like, "Do I
conspiracies
but do
tied
I
into
really
that.
need to know? Do I need to know that they're gonna drop a nuke on me?
Oh,
What the
you're
fuck am
gonna
I
know.
Yeah,
what the
we'll
fuck
know
am
when
I
we blow up,
what the fuck am
Yeah.
I supposed to do?" So
and then
what
it won't matter.
yeah, and so what so you want me to like fucking panic at the last stages of my life?
Right.
I wanna do what like, you know, some of the Hindu like uh there's the gurus that said if the last thing you think of is God or the source or the spirit, whatever you want, whatever people call it, the universe, if you die with the Om, you know, and you
Right.
get focused in that, you'll be moved into the next like you know dimension or whatever it is explained. And it's like, how
Right.
the hell can we do that if they're blasting alarms in our heads
Right.
and they're telling us to freak out 5 seconds before we die? Like I don't
It,
want to do that.
it it
Yeah,
reminds me of that iconic photo of the Buddhist monk who lit himself on fire and then sat still in lotus position
yeah,
while engulfed in flames,
yeah,
sitting in front of that tank. And it goes
yeah.
to show you that he was not attached to any sort of
No,
bodily ideals, or he didn't have preferences over
no.
comfort.
He knew where he was going and he got into samadhi. And when you're
Right.
in samadhi, if you can get into samadhi, then you don't care about all of this. This none of this makes a difference because it's we know it's an illusion. And so then you
Right.
just get in there and you prepare for your ride.
Right.
And there's something an essence in this world that is trying to stop us from realizing that. And I feel like, you know, that was really, I think, the core of inner metal when we were
Hmm.
talking about when I was writing those words, I was just like, wow. I'm right because I'm reading a new book every time I write my lyrics, you know,
Right.
like
Right.
on there.
Hey,
So I'm like,
same.
wow, wow, you know, like that's so
Right.
cool. And
And to what you said earlier about okay, so I don't watch the news, and if that makes me ignorant, then so be it. But I'd have to gently disagree, and I think that if you don't watch the news, you are actually avoiding ignorance, because the news over the last couple years has went from exaggerating to just flat out
li-
lying.
lies,
Hmm.
yeah.
So
But I've had people say that to me though. They're like, you know, that's wrong of you because you're not keeping up on. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do about the world, though? Okay,
yeah,
so wait, so you tell me about all this suffering, and then you make me feel like shit for the next 3 days, and I'm
right.
going to sit around and be anxious about it, and I'm still not going to come out there and be able to fix any of it.
There's no
What are
fucking
you
point.
doing to me?
I think the
So
news causes more suffering
yeah,
with
Then,
people
yeah, in the
watching it.
first place,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They're
they make people worry
It's a
constantly.
huge source of
right,
anxiety. I feel like for me to help the world, the better place for me to be is to not listen to that shit and
right,
to be able to write music that helps people talk because I talked to by the way it's everyone knows this about me that's following from our end and that I talk to everybody. I do not ignore anyone, and
right,
it's one thing that I get a lot of people that play the video game that our music is on sold over 1 million copies, and those people will write to us and say my kid's playing the game, I can hear your song, and I'll go,
yeah,
oh cool, and then they'll go, wait, is this really you? And I go, well, why wouldn't it be me? And they're like, wait, it's really you? Like, holy shit, like I wouldn't lie to you. You talk to me, and I'm like, I talk to everybody.
right, right,
I'm not
right.
on some fucking pedestal. Like
It's
I'm
fun,
very accessible, you know, and
right?
just don't do it to me in
In
the
the
period aisle.
supermarket,
In the period aisle when I'm
right?
PMSing and I'm freaking out about wings because some guy put wings on. Look, wings don't belong on a fucking maxi pad. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. And I just want to be able to be comfortable during that time, you know. But other than that, I'm
Right,
very accessible. I actually have done some outreach work with people, suicide veterans, all that kind of stuff. I'm very
right,
open if someone wants to talk to me about
right,
something that's going on. I'll help them do some problem solving. I can't like give like you know all the solutions, but I'll listen and I'll
right,
try to give some help. That's been a big part of my life with people, and so that I feel is where I'm better. I'm
right,
not going to sit and listen to the news and bite my nails and go, oh my God, you know, I'm going to write music and I'm going to talk to people. And
right.
that is how I can help the world. That's what
right.
I'm doing.
Yeah,
So
whenever you avoid those destructive things like propaganda in the news, it gives you a sense of equanimity that now you can absorb it from other people who might need the
right.
help.
Yeah,
And by avoiding that destructive outer source of distraction, you are now calm enough to be a place of acceptance and peace for someone else who has been
absolutely.
poisoned by that very thing. And at that point might be a good time to tell them that, hey, maybe a lot of your anxiety comes from listening to advertisements and
It does.
propaganda.
It
You
does.
know?
And the depression comes from the doom scrolling, and you're looking at all these people that they, oh, do they, are they better than me, or oh, am I not
Yeah,
living up to something, or something like that. And I think that that's really harmful for people,
right.
um, to be constantly bombarded with all this stuff and never taking breaks from it. That is going to fuck up your mental health so quick.
Right, right, and
And oh
I
man,
can't help but feel like TikTok is really lowering the attention span and appreciativeness and gratefulness of people because it's the most instant thing I've ever seen in my life.
not good. It's not
And
good. Not
TikToks
good.
are I mean, so I've got a TikTok page or whatever, out of necessity, and
Yeah,
I hope people are enjoying the TikToks and everything. But the quickness of it and the flashiness of it, a TikTok video is not a person speaking and showing a picture. A
right.
TikTok video is flashing lights, and then a dude pops up out of nowhere, and then there's a color scheme, and then there's a fucking word, and then everything they say is popping up on the screen, and they've got emoticons, and then all the lights are flying up in the air. There is so much going on the screen in front of you. What the fuck are you learning? Like,
Yeah.
and then
So
there's reactions to that TikTok, and then there's
yeah.
another box for that reaction to this
I don't
reaction to
even
that
look at it.
TikTok.
I don't use TikTok, so we set up an account to park it there. Threw up a couple videos and just forgot about it.
Yeah,
And I'm afraid to open it. I'm afraid to get sucked in, so I don't look at
It's
it.
like
And
it's put there to drain your
well,
serotonin.
it's called
yeah,
TikTok.
Yeah.
right,
It's called TikTok. And do you remember in the movie Independence Day when he goes, "It's a countdown," and he goes, "For what?" And it's like, it's a
yeah.
fucking countdown for what, So it's like, I don't think I want to play with something called TikTok. And I have to think about that sometimes. And this person saying it's great exposure. Yeah, but to what effect? You want to lose yourself on there? So I think it's okay if you can, like, maybe, like, do
But
what we
exposure
did.
to what
So
though?
yeah, what are we being exposed to? Because I don't understand the exposure thing either. Like, well, what do we need exposure for? Like, you know, like,
Well, so the thing is, like, okay, the reason I put up a TikTok channel is the same reason that you did, but for slightly different circumstances. People were making TikToks out of Library of the Untold and
yeah,
getting thousands of views. So I knew I had to do something the moment that I saw a YouTube video called "These Freaky TikToks Will Change Your Life" or whatever, and then it was a guy watching a slur of TikToks. And on that slur of TikToks was me. And on it was compressed, the
yeah,
file was small, the sound quality was low, and it didn't say my name anywhere. Instead, it
yeah.
said at the top, it said history exposed. Nothing to do with me. And then at the bottom it said for more, visit our YouTube channel, this and that zeitgeist or
Wow.
whatever. And he reacted to my video and reacted to what I was saying. And this guy's got 3 million subscribers.
Holy
My
shit.
name was nowhere to
And
be
he couldn't
found.
bother to be like, "Hey, by the way," like, that's kind of fucked up. I don't
No,
know.
and
That's
now
not
he
right.
enjoyed my video, and I'm glad that that message got out there. But at that moment, I was like, okay, it is absolutely necessary
Yeah,
for
you
me
have to
to
do it.
have a TikTok.
Yeah. We had some people come to us and say they're using your music on TikToks. So I checked
Yeah,
it out, and that's when I said,
right.
well, maybe we should park a space there just to have a reference, a point of reference to come back to
Marcus,
if people find it. The park a space, and then
Marcus
threw
space.
like three
Right,
or four videos up there, and then I just, like, fucking forgot about it. And I don't open it, I don't look at it. I've
right.
thought about going on there, but I'm just so, something keeps telling me not to. And I've actually feel like we were talking about Twitch, we were talking about it was TikTok and YouTube, and I said, YouTube's got so much stuff now that they didn't have before that maybe I need to like move towards that instead of
Right.
things like, because I use YouTube to watch, like I said, those little videos, with Alan Watts and whatever, and like,
Right.
and that I don't feel sucks you in the way, because it's not really like, it's not designed the same way.
No,
Um, you
I
know,
will state right here, right now, that YouTube is a beam of grace amongst a cesspool of social media.
I agree. I
And I'm
agree.
Mhm.
not downing any particular social medias, not even TikTok or Facebook, who have done some really shady shit.
Yeah.
I researched, I mean, as a kind of a conspiracy guy, I research a lot of the dark spaces of all of these mediums.
Right.
YouTube doesn't have any darkness to it. It is
Yeah.
you. It is
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
tube. And not to
And
mention,
like this, like
yeah,
this.
this is what
No,
it is right now.
there's
But
no filter. There's no
they're
filter.
right.
This
And
is
the
just
other
us.
thing about YouTube is that they actually pay their users. Like TikTok
Yeah.
might make a couple bucks, but with YouTube, if you give a fuck about your craft, you can make a living off of
Right, right. And
YouTube.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
There's no other media outlets that appreciate
No,
their
they're not.
users like YouTube
They
does.
don't. And I like we were talking about this, when you get on here, if you're on like Instagram or any other place, you can filter what you look like.
Right,
And I
right.
like filters are fun. I use them all the time. I just put one up recently. It was like some weird goth filter. I thought it was, somebody thought it was my real makeup. I'm like, no, that's filter.
Was it the one
Um
where you had no eyeballs?
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I sometimes I'll grab one and I'll go, let's look for the weirdest fucking one, And because sometimes it's fun, it's like putting on a costume. But the thing is that you put on too many costumes in those platforms, and then nobody knows what the fuck you even really are,
Right.
because
Or who you are.
it's whatever. And when you put out like professional photos, it gets photoshopped and all that crap. So it's like, yeah, that's part of life. But this is really cool, and it's funny because I play with oracle cards. I draw cards, tarot cards, and oracle cards.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's no filters on YouTube. Like, what are people gonna look like?
Right.
And I drew a card, an angel card that's about beauty, and to just the beauty is, it reminds me it doesn't matter. All that shit doesn't matter. It's funny, and it's like, I think that's really cool that YouTube doesn't push
Right.
that,
Yeah.
where the other ones are pushing that. See, like, you can't whiten your teeth,
Right.
and you
Right.
can't, there's not, this is it. Like, yeah, I got, like, teeth aren't glistening white.
Right.
Or like, it's like, this is what you look like, and people are gonna have to accept that. And I think that's really cool of YouTube to do that, actually.
Right. It's YouTube, not persona tube. You
Yeah,
know.
we don't have to think about what we
Mhm.
look like. Who gives a crap? This is just about some cool shit to
Right.
talk about, and that's it. And I like that. And you know, to me, that's so awesome. So I think we would
It's a
stick
it's a
to
beautiful. I think. I think YouTube is around, going to stick around for a long time because
yeah.
I mean, audio books, podcasts, documentaries, clips of movies. Everything is applicable to YouTube without any kind of. Now, YouTube has taken stuff down off the internet, and that was something I disagreed with because I don't like censorship. But to be honest
Right.
with you, when I dug deep into what they were taking down, it was the right fucking move. Now, some people are going to disagree with me, but what I found was like underage stuff and
Oh
grotesque
yeah.
violence and stuff that Facebook doesn't take down.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. You
Facebook will
know.
take down your opinion, but
Oh
they'll
yeah.
leave up little boys doing bad
I
things.
Yeah.
I saw something recently on their Threads app that really disturbed me. It was women very sexualized, breastfeeding their children. I have no problem with breastfeeding; it's a beautiful thing.
Right.
This was women exploiting children for likes and views, and I was like, "Holy shit!" And I know that they're gonna leave it there because it's breastfeeding, so it's beautiful, and yeah, and
Yeah.
there think that anyone who has a problem with it has a problem with breastfeeding, and it's like, no, there's a difference between putting a baby on your breast and feeding it because it's hungry, and fucking dressing up in fishnets and playing with your nipples and having, it's like child pornography. I was like, holy shit.
That quite literally
It's
is child
it's
pornography.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And they're allowing it, and they're not, and these
Well,
channels are
nothing is against their
huge.
guidelines.
Yeah, this channel is huge, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh. And
Right.
all it is comments of men making like disgusting perverted comments, and they're allowing it, and it's being allowed,
Which
and
platform was
they're
this?
monetizing it.
They allow stalkers on there
It
too.
was really bad.
You can't like
Yeah.
Which
you can't
platform
put
was this
someone
again?
in for
Oh, Threads, that new Twitter app
Threads.
for, yeah, the Instagram
There's
one.
so many now.
Yeah.
it's too many.
I think that one is gonna be kind of weird because I found it that it's slightly boring in the sense of, and this is coming from someone who reads a lot. I don't mean like not exciting boring. I mean it's just like I
Right.
don't really I don't really understand it. Like what the
Right.
point is when we have all this other shit. It's like what's the purpose of this? We already have
Right.
places where you can type words, you know. So I didn't really get it, but there's a lot of like sexualized stuff on there, which is fine if you're an adult, but when you start bringing children into it, then it's
No,
like
still good.
okay, what the fuck?
Right.
So
And
yeah.
I have a feeling that that's one of the things that YouTube wouldn't put up with. But
No.
just to play devil's advocate here, because I saw a couple comments from Cregan there, and by the way, Cregan, I love you, dude.
Who's Cregan?
Cregan does my graphics design for
Oh,
the intros of my videos,
Nice.
and also a couple lyric videos for the end of
they're
the
really
videos.
cool. Tell him,
Yeah,
tell Cregan that you got some really amazing
Yeah,
graphics
it's
because
really cool.
that's what like got my attention the first time that I
right.
got the channel. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Yeah, so
It definitely changed my life when I started reaching out to different people, and there he is right there. But to reaching out to different people to explore these things that I couldn't do that he made possible. If you watch, and by the way, synchronicity, when we were talking about reptilians, you used the word mirror 3 times. My video is called Reptile in the Mirror. So I
ah,
just thought that was
good
kind of fun. But
job.
so he did an 8-minute epic Anunnaki story from start to finish, animated. It's fucking gorgeous. And so I narrated it, and it was an allegory of how reptilians came to be from the Anunnaki from dinosaurs. It's
Oh,
a
I gotta check
fictional
that out.
story, but it's meant to represent what's going on that we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
illustrated it, and it is one of the most badass intros I've of any of the videos I've had. But
That's
That's
he
awesome.
does
awesome.
a lot of
I
the
want to check
intros
it
and
out.
stuff. But now, hold on, I'm fucking derailed. What was I?
I think we were talking about you do the same thing that I do, where I
Yeah,
start like going off and then I don't know what the hell I was even talking about. Um,
it's called Reptiles in the Mirror
oh,
Gnosis.
you were saying because YouTube will take things down and
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's right. So
yeah.
so to play devil's advocate, I don't agree that they took down David Icke, for
Mhm.
example, because he
I was
called the
talking
Queen of
about this
England.
one, yeah.
Right. So no, I understand that David Icke might not be correct. I get that because the reason they took him down is because belligerent false information.
Yeah.
But why didn't you take down all the flat Earth videos then?
Right,
Hmm.
What
exactly.
there so there's certain things I don't agree that
Well,
they took down.
maybe he was getting too close to the truth and they didn't like it. I don't know, you know?
But in
And
that case, I don't think it was YouTube that took it down. I think it was someone above
Oh
that
yeah, for
oh,
that
sure.
stepped in.
absolutely. Because
Because
yeah,
YouTube isn't one to take something down that's making them good money. So
right.
why would they have any incentive to
Yeah,
take
that's
that down
coming from
unless
another source.
That's coming from like,
right,
a source of like
If they're getting too close,
maybe it's the
take it down.
right,
stockholders. And those stockholders have a lot of pull with companies where the company might have one vision and the stockholders are like, "Now you're doing this," and they have to do it
right.
because they tell them what to do. So that can be part of it. It could also just be weird algorithm shit because algorithms can sometimes do stuff
Oh
that
no,
makes no sense at all.
it was
You
public.
got,
They deplatformed them. They said you
yeah,
are that's what I mean too is YouTube didn't take him down. Everyone did at the
right,
same time.
right.
Yeah, that
Oh,
came from
Well,
somewhere
yeah,
else.
up above.
they were painting him with a brush that I think delved into like racism, and
Right.
I think they were trying to they used that. I don't recall reading anything by him that was like that, but maybe there was that I missed.
Oh
I don't
no, not at all. They call Graham Hancock a racist because
Yeah.
he said
That's
that
the
there's
easy way to
pyramids.
discredit somebody.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
because what's the quickest way? If someone wants to take you down, that's the quickest way
instant.
to take you down.
Hmm.
No one's
Right.
going to question that. They're going to say, "Oh, well, they're a racist, and that's the end of it, and move on with your day." You
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So
So if you check it out, this book right here, America Before, is racist because he discovered that there's pyramids underneath the Cahokia Mounds.
wait a minute, is that the guy that's always on the Greg Braden show?
I'm not
Oh,
familiar with
there's
him.
a guy, he's got, like, the gray kinda
Yeah, he's
mullet, he's
great.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but the other guy, Greg Braden has that, like, mullet, kinda 80s
Oh,
style.
Greg Braden. Yeah, I
Yeah,
got.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he has, I think, that guy on his show sometimes. I know who he is,
Yeah.
yeah.
I got a Greg Braden book around here too, but yeah, so that made him racist. And and what's also strange is where so I dug into because his Netflix special was huge, right? Number
Uh-huh.
2 on Netflix. So
Wow,
someone had to step in and figure out a way to make him racist. And what they
right,
did
right.
was um the Aztecs, let me make sure I get this right. Someone's gonna yell at me if I don't. It was yeah, it was the Aztecs who had Quetzalcoatl, and they described Quetzalcoatl to be a white man with a
Okay.
beard, right? Now, this is what the Aztecs said. Graham Hancock reported that's what happened. That made him racist.
Well, they were saying
So
that too about, like, the Nordic alien idea, the Nordics that had the blue eyes and the that
that's what
that
kind of came to mind about it.
yeah.
And there's a lot of questions that could be asked there, and that could be a whole nother podcast on its own. But and well, okay, speaking of which, we are going on 2.5 hours now, it looks like.
Are you
So
serious?
there we 111 likes are coming up. All right.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Uh,
There it is.
so there it is right there. Nice. So don't we don't get to do it. We don't get to do it.
Hi.
All right.
Oh,
So
is
this
that
is
ice cream? I want some of that. I can't have that.
well, we're trying to quit sugar now that we talked to you guys. So
Oh,
We
well, by
just
the way,
went to the store.
speaking of sugar,
yeah.
so it was like in the 1970s, Harvard did a research study on sugar and how it causes cancer and it's addictive and it makes people sick and diabetes and all that crap. And Big Sugar, who owns the companies that puts it on all that stuff, they suppressed the
Yep.
article, and then
Right.
it came back out later, and so we were all fed all that shit our whole lives, and now
Mhm.
we're finding out that we weren't supposed to be eating any of
Right.
it.
And remember in the
Put
90s when
down
the
the
news
coke,
said
man.
right. Well, the news said in the 90s that sugar was safe. And then we found out that study was conducted by Coca-Cola.
Yeah,
Right,
the
right,
biggest
right.
sugar conglomerate of them all.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, and so before we end this thing, real quick, and there's going to be a round 2, I can tell already.
I was gonna say, and we gotta have you on our radio. We have a
Yes,
radio show.
I
It's
can't wait for
it's
that.
so like it's just
What?
us bullshitting about
Yeah,
aliens, movies, that weird movies. It's obscure, you know,
right.
and like just music refined. And we're gonna play some of
Perfect.
your music on there, and
Good,
we
good.
try to like find cool shit and put it up there. And we'll have you on our show. It's only audio, it's not video,
It's fine.
um but it's on the radio, it's on the internet radio, and it's fun, and I think we
I
would have a
I
fun
would I would love to have Void Stares Back, which is what I call my music, I guess, nowadays, have a little bit of exposure now that, oh my goodness. Do you guys hearing this? These cats are
I was gonna
having
say,
a,
it sounds like cats and kids going on back
yeah,
there.
no, there's
Um,
cats, they're running up the coffee table, up the wall, doing a backflip, Spider-Manning over the couch, and then flying back in there. It's all fun. But
so
all right,
guys,
well,
like for you guys that are writing, our show, you can find all the links on our socials and stuff. If you go to our website, hailsaganofficial.com, it has like all the stuff. But if you go into any bio of our like, like Instagram or whatever, it has a link tree with all that stuff.
right,
But I was gonna say we never really did a lot on our YouTube. We kind of made videos and threw them on there and ran
right,
away because we were so busy with other stuff.
right.
So we're gonna probably put more effort into that in the future and all that. But we never looked at like having a subscriber. We never even thought that was even like a thing until like
Yeah.
recently. Oh,
Again, you just have a parking space on YouTube.
yeah, it was just
So
like there's our videos, whatever.
right.
But if they want to subscribe, we'll do our
Yeah.
best to we'll try to keep up on it for you so that you guys can
Right.
keep up because
Well,
I'm
I'm
really bad
telling
about that.
everybody who will be watching this video here in the future to subscribe to Hail Sagan
Thank
because you
you.
can hit their playlist and you can listen to their album there. But I do want to ask you guys, when it comes to merchandise and listening to your music, where do you guys prefer people go?
So hailsaganofficial.com is the main website that we have, and is it Hail Sagan Shop or yeah, it's
Yeah, Hail Sagan Shop.
hailsaganshop.com is like the direct store link, but you can get to it from there, and there's
Right.
also like links on
Everything's
Instagram
pretty
and
much linked out of
yeah, and so there's
hailsaganofficial.com.
Right.
merchandise there's a lot of different like I guess shirts and stuff
I
and
want a T-shirt. That's what I
yeah.
want.
So our CD sold out.
Nice.
But I have a couple. We have some extra ones that we saved just to give away to like friends and family, and so we're gonna send you one, and
Yeah. Thank you.
and and yeah, guys, we're on Spotify. So
Mhm.
we also ignored that for a really long time. It's starting to grow now because we started telling people to go there. We totally forgot about all this shit, right? And
Right.
we're like,
So it's hard
oh,
to think
there's
about all
so
of it when you're
much
trying to be creative
happening.
and put
Right.
out
Yeah.
music.
And we
Right.
also like, we also were out there touring and then I got sick and there was all this shit happening. And it's just like I forgot that like you're supposed to push that stuff. So we've
Right.
just been over the last few months really getting in gear with Spotify and now we're gonna start on
Right.
YouTube again. And we're gonna do our best. And I will, if enough people ask me, maybe I'll do a little channel on because I have a YouTube for me. I just don't there's a couple meditation
Right.
things when I first started awakening, but I really never put anything on there. So I would be open to doing that. More CDs. So Nick and I have talked about that we can't reprint the CD the way that it came out because it was a special edition with guitar picks and stickers and all this. But we've talked about doing a direct to print CD possibly, where they could
Mhm.
just they can print them as people order them, and it has nothing to do with us, and then they can just.
Ah.
So I got to
Okay.
look into that and set that up for anyone that missed it because once we sold out, that was it, and then nobody could get it. And
Right.
it
And
was just whatever.
congratulations on that, by the way. That's
Thank you.
badass.
Thank you.
And that goes to show you that you guys don't necessarily need to push anything. As
No,
long as you're staying in the creative pocket, your music speaks
right.
for itself.
It's its
And
own little thing.
right.
So
And I've never done an ounce of promotion for Library of the Untold. And it's
cool.
just one of those things where I actually, like you guys, have to avoid some of that pushing in order to be creative. Because if I
Yeah.
start living on that other side of pushing what I'm doing, I'm going to lose the element that's
Yeah,
selling in the
because
first
I don't
place.
want to be that band that only posts, "Go listen to my show, go
Well,
listen
those
to my
bands,
Spotify all the
Right.
time,"
And
because
then you
that's
yeah,
all
become
they want.
annoying to the viewers. And
Yeah, and
right.
the other thing too is like Nick and I are both guitarists. We're both endorsed by Dean Guitars and DiMarzio, and we absolutely love to play guitar. And one of the
Oh, you
things
got
that
the
really,
Marzio too?
yeah, we have DiMarzio. We're on. If you go on their artist page, you'll
they
see us up there.
they
And
just
I,
sent
I
us
switch out my
custom
pickups every
pickups.
time I have a guitar. It comes with EMGs. I switch them out with
we
DiMarzio
got
every time.
Yeah.
DiMarzio and Deactivator X is what we use.
They
What
just
we use
made a
on ours.
custom set of Deactivator X's for us, and they
Yeah,
went in our new Dean
Yeah,
guitars.
so
Yeah.
Dean customized our new guitars, and we got the Floyd Rose set up with the whammy bars and all that. We got the what is it on the back?
We got the tremolo
Tremolo,
note.
and he built a panel for it, an access
Yep.
panel, and so we got
This
our
is custom.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and we got our
There's a kill
deactivator
switch
X.
on the
It's
guitars.
so fucking cool.
Ah,
Yeah.
you got the little.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, little arcade button.
So
Yeah.
beep, 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 beep. We've been
That's
fucking around with
that's
that, and it's so
badass,
fun.
dude.
So we've
As
been so
long as
we've
you
been
don't have
doing
a
that.
Floyd Rose, I'm down.
So what
Yeah.
we've been doing is we've been doing a lot of videos on that kind of stuff, like us, because I was always a rhythm guitarist and I'm learning lead. So I've been shredding and stuff. So we've been putting little videos up of me learning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like
And
that
that's
comes down
awesome,
to
by the way. I love that approach of posting videos and showing yourself in the learning process because
yeah,
that's the most likable and fun way to engage with your audience.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's almost like who was the guy who said it? He said no one cares how much you know unless they know how much you care. And
yeah,
it's one of those
Mhm.
things where
yeah,
if you come out here and you're like, all right, guys, I got to figure it out and I'm going to teach you what's going on. People are like, fuck off. And it's the
yeah,
Yeah.
same thing with music. And whenever you're like, hey, we're attempting to do something new and creative, we don't know what we're
mhm,
doing yet, but we're going to see where this goes.
yeah,
And now it's an adventure. And now you're along
yeah.
Yeah.
for the ride. And
People
now
like
you're,
to come along.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
yeah,
I
we're
said to
learning
people, I was like,
together.
okay, I'm learning how to play lead guitar. Here's me playing Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. I've never done this before. It's not
Right.
perfect, but I finally figured it out. It's a very hard solo, I feel, for someone that's never played solos and lead before. And it's not perfect, and that's okay. And I put it up, and you know what? Not one person said anything bad about it. And
Right.
everybody started writing to me, and all these people were writing to me saying, "Oh my god, I'm gonna go get my guitar. I'm gonna go pick up my you just
Mhm.
inspired
It's
me to pick up my
inspiring.
guitar."
Yeah.
Yeah, and people are now playing guitar and they're writing to me and we're talking about it and it's so cool. And I'm like, I didn't have to perfect it. I wasn't gonna ever play it exactly the way that it was probably meant to be played. But now if I do another one, I've gotten so much better, I'll even blow that one away, and it's just like
Right.
learning and going along with it,
And we
you
get to
know?
see that progression take place, and there's nothing more exciting and more personable than that, you know.
Oh my
And
god.
my viewers get to watch me go from pronouncing words wrong that I've never heard said but only seen read, to finally learning how to pronounce some of these fucking occipital lobe or whatever, like that I've mispronounced time and time before, but then make fun of myself for doing
Well,
so.
don't get too hung up on that, because when I was at the university studying biology, I had a professor, and I think it may have been an anatomy class.
Mhm.
I don't remember. And I remember I said, "Is it duodenum or duodenum?" And he said, "It's whatever you want it to be."
It's a mouth
And
noise.
I didn't know. And then I asked. I remember I had to go to like a gastro doctor for some heartburn once, and I said, and he said duodenum. I said duodenum, and he said no, it's duodenum. And I said, but my
Right.
professor said it can be whatever you want. And he goes, well, I don't care. And I just remember, like, they don't even know how to say anything.
Right.
Nobody knows.
I
So say what you want.
I've never hated on anyone who said the word Jung. I've Carl Jung. They say I've heard it a million
Oh yeah,
times,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like, no, no, no. That tells me that you read it, that you
Hmm.
Yeah.
were actually reading, that you were curious, and that you cracked open the
Right.
source of it,
Exactly.
because that's what
Exactly.
it's Jung. That's Jung. So
Oh,
if
when I first found Thich Nhat Hanh, I thought it was like Thich Nhat Hanh.
yeah,
And I said
exactly.
Thich Nhat Hanh, and someone corrected me. It's Teak, and I'm like, well, I don't know,
Right.
you know.
The
And I
first
found out.
time I heard someone say, "Oh, I love," we were talking about philosophy. They were like, "Oh, I love Socrates," and I was
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
Socrates, wasn't that from
Bill and
Bill and
Ted.
Ted?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so great.
"Did they do that?"
Socrates and Frood, Sigmund Freud.
Yeah.
We love
I
that
didn't
movie.
see that, but that's awesome.
We're like the wild stallions. We're playing
Right.
our guitars up in
Right.
the, you know.
I would rather see that, and I would rather hear Socrates and Jung than people who are absolutely ignorant to any of this
Right,
stuff,
right.
you know?
You're
So it
you're
goes to show you,
absolutely right.
yeah,
You're
our
absolutely.
imperfections are what make us perfect in the first place,
I
you know?
love it. I think it's awesome, and I think that
Well, and it shows
that's just,
people's willingness to learn and to want
yeah.
to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so cool that anybody even wants to talk about any of the stuff in the first place. So say it, like,
Exactly.
call it what you want to call it. I don't care.
Hmm.
It,
You
it,
know.
it it's growing. The type of music that you guys are doing and the philosophy that I'm kind of dabbling in is slowly but surely starting to grow to where, because you remember, you know, there's like metal elites, right? That the
Yeah.
black metal has to sound a certain way or
The
whatever. Or
purest.
that's right. That's going away so
Yeah.
fucking quick.
It's
And
so
at this,
crazy. It's so
yeah,
crazy
yeah,
because
it's tacky,
metal. What
right?
is metal anyway? It's so many friggin' things. It's
You
like,
want
Yeah.
to make,
what is
yeah,
So
they
many
want to put
genres.
rules to music that is supposed to be
metal?
rebellious in the first place, but
Exactly.
Hmm.
that's another tangent. And
Yeah,
my
like we
battery,
could all go on for like 10 fucking
yeah,
years. Just
yeah, I
like,
know it.
we can just go on and on
But
and on.
round two is coming up, and
Yeah.
everybody, this is Hail Sagan, and I will be bringing Void Stairs back to their channel as well, and I will talk to you guys again very soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
All
All
right.
right.
Take care.